Okay, we're on in 2 minutes.
Good.
Yeah.
You're unmuted.
You know what? It says I've registered, but it's not coming on the screen. Why would that be? You got any idea about that, Matt? It says you successfully registered, but it's not coming up.
You have to go to your email. Click that.
Oh, back to, well, that's how I got here, but yeah.
Go back to your email.
Oh. No. Oh. I usually just hit here and it comes up with this. Thank you. Well,
Oh, I know. Okay, go back to your email.
well, I go into the agenda and then there's the here button.
It might just be scroll. Emails here, but you're
Oh.
still-
All right. Welcome to the HARC regular meeting of July 17th at 5:30 PM at Rebecca Hall. It is a hybrid meeting tonight. And if you are joining or need to join by phone, you could dial 301-715-8592. Our meeting ID tonight is 876-4109-1694. Passcode is 695618. This is a reminder before we officially start the meeting, the purpose of HARC is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, architectural integrity, and cultural resources of the town and the Telluride Historic Landmark District. Present tonight from Town Council, Ilana and Elena, and then let's see who else we have. Any other council members online? I don't see them. Staff, we have Erica and Darren and Ally and Piper. And I just, my connection is anybody else out there online from staff?
I don't see anyone.
Zoe, I think is coming. Okay. And we'll do our roll call.
Kieran Lannon,
Stacy Lake.
Matt Lee.
Art Chamba.
Bob Mather.
Welcome, Bob, on Zoom
Yes, thank you.
from the historic town of Crested Butte.
Well, we're up in the mountain
Oh, okay.
town, so it's that historic.
All right. No history there.
No.
Just to confirm the site walk today that we did, the board and visitors, public had a site walk at 3 PM on today, July 17th, 485 East Columbia. During the site walk, we only had discussions related to the orientation of the site, physical characteristics of the site, and the layout of the site. Attending were Mark Shambaugh, Kieran Lannon, Matt Lee, Stacy Lake, Erica Jensen, Darren Andalaria, excuse me, and the applicant Jody Wright, and some miscellaneous members of the public. So thanks for coming. With that, approval of the minutes, we need a motion from our June 12th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 12th meeting.
Second, somebody?
I'll second.
How do you vote?
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes. Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
And I'll make a motion to approve the June 14th meeting of the chair as written. Okay, staff announcements.
I don't believe we have any staff announcements at this time.
I'm gonna put one in here just from our 2 weeks ago. Not everybody was able to attend. Meeting led by John Alley and Erica and some other people. Reference everything from legislative procedures to making motions. We want to try to teach an old dog new tricks tonight, and that's us. We're the old dog. So, according to Robert's rules and parliamentary procedure, and Piper schooled us very well on this, what we should be doing is when we make a motion, that person makes the motion. We always jump in a second and then do friendly amendments. What we should be doing is stop after the motion is made and then add any additional conditions and gather them in. And then a person makes the second, right, Ally? And then collects, we've got it all done. And then if there is somehow some friendly amendment, which means something new and different or change in what's been made, okay, then we can do a friendly amendment. But additional conditions are not friendly amendments. So can we try that? We make a motion, we stop, gather up any other conditions from other people. We don't have time to pass notes to the center and one person review them. And then I'll ask for a second.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. The same person who makes the motion will have to read the additional or say the additional conditions. So it would be good if you could write them down or at least make note of what.
Well, that's the only exception I would like to, as we try this, if we correct ourselves, maybe not do because it's just going to slow us down. But as long as we collect them before there's a second, I took that as the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, they can't read everybody's handwriting and then, it's just, we've been down this trail before and this group works pretty well as a team.
Right, you do.
So if it's,
Let's see how it goes.
okay. I'll try to remember.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to preemptively apologize because I'm probably just gonna snap and do a second right away.
You have a habit?
If you
I do.
do, then that makes it a whole big thing, Karen. We have to withdraw the motion or
Write yourself
whatever.
a
It's not right.
Okay. This is over.
Just start smacking me if
Okay.
I start breathing in, Stacy.
Pass. Just give it to Stacy.
I actually do have a staff announcement.
Oh.
The design guidelines went to first reading at town council and they were approved. They'll go to second reading, I believe, August 6th. And the sign code went for first reading and was approved as well. So we'll go for second reading. And besides
Thank you.
that, that's all staff announcements.
Okay. Any public comment on non-agenda items? Non-agenda items? I don't see any out there. Okay, then we will start the public hearing items starting with.
Do you want to go over the public hearing process?
Yeah, the rules for the
Yep.
public and all. Just to remind everybody of the process in case it's your first time listener. The HARC chair will introduce the project. Staff then goes and gives a presentation and answers HARC's questions. The applicant then will give a presentation. We ask to be 3 minutes or 30 minutes or less. And especially if you're continuance, I think the applicant, you can just go through the conditions. We don't have to start with anything else and make it more efficient. The public is then invited to make comments. We ask for a 3-minute limit on the public and there's no dialogue allowed between the public and the applicant and the board. But the applicant will have address then to rebut or to address your comments and the public comment ends and HARC will start deliberation. So that's the process. Okay, so first public hearing, if the team wants to come up and get ready, it's Virginia Placer to be continued from May 15, 2004 HARC meeting. It's a consideration of an application for preliminary large-scale new construction in the public purpose zone district which will contain more than 5,000 square foot area per land use code 7203B2A1. Legal description is lot B2R, Virginia Placer. And it's a accommodations to plat book 1, page 4898, January 30th, 2017. The rest as written, 13.9 acres. Its address is 1200 Black Bear Road. His own district is public purpose, owner, town of Telluride, applicant, Caddis Collaborative, staff member, Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. So this is the review of Virginia Placer 2B. This large-scale preliminary application was continued May 15th HARC meeting. Just a quick reminder, it's located in the public purpose zone district and the accommodations area, and it's out near the end of Black Bear Road. So conditions from the last meeting, condition 1 was to set back the 3rd and 4th level to reduce the perceived scale and reflect the natural topography. Condition 2 was to revise the 3rd and 4th levels to better respect pedestrian scale. And condition 3 was to revise the primary facade to have a significant break in the wall plane. So the 4th level was pulled back 2 feet to break up the wall plane. And the project also did shift slightly. I don't know why there's bottom.
Recording in progress.
Oh. I guess we can see that. I don't know why there's the bottom. Is that just part of the screen, Piper? The bottom gray part? The zoom?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
trying to. fix
No, it's
it.
fine. The project shifted slightly. So in the before, you can see that that lower module was connected. And now they shifted that lower module to almost be a different building. And I think that's helped with the stepping down as well. And then there were addition of shed roof forms throughout the project that also do help with pedestrian scale. Condition 3 has been retained as the 4th level was only pushed back about 2 feet, and it seems that breaking it up further would help with the massing. Condition 4 was to break up the primary roof form. The roof form has been revised to have more breaks in the largest module, and shed roof forms have been added to help with the massing, especially by shifting that one module. You can see that the roof form has been significantly broken up. Condition 5 was to step down the west side yard, and condition 6 was to revise the retaining walls to better contour to the site. The building was repositioned to work better with the grades. On the west, the large retaining wall was revised and a shed roof was extended to conceal most of the retaining wall. And on the east side, repositioning the smaller module helped reduce the need for a retaining wall. The smaller retaining wall is concealed with the shed roof that does cover the parking area. Condition 7 was to ensure that all parking spaces will be accessible year-round. All parking spaces have now been covered. Condition 8 was to add snow guards to areas of the roof that shed onto pedestrian areas in the parking area. The applicant did indicate snow guards would be added, but they are not on the plan, so this condition has been retained. Condition 9 was to ensure that all doors onto decks are no more than 2/3 light. The applicant also indicated the doors would be no more than 2/3 light, but there's no marks on the plans. So that condition has been retained as well. And staff is recommending approval with 3 conditions, all of which were retained. So there are no new conditions. And just a reminder that if approved, the board will see this again at final review. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Questions for Eric? Thank you. Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. Welcome. Welcome back, Jim.
How's it going? Jim with Caddis this time, and Bob Wilson is on the on Zoom, and he will aid in the 3D model view while I pull up here the presentation. Thank you all, and good evening. So I'm going to start with this view from the road up to the building from Black Bear. We're looking obviously slightly west and south, and the changes that were overviewed by Erica can be seen here in the roof steps. I'm going to work myself down. The stepping of that upper level with the addition of the roof, as you can see here. This was retained, and a simplification of the roof in a way over here in the corner, but also minimizing of the 2-story volume that has 2 1-bedroom units by shedding the roof toward the east, and then covered parking east of those 2 units there. And a screen wall here was added just to create some variation in protection from that unit from the drive for their deck. We've also moved the trash enclosure and bike parking out to the front before it was in the back. So we also believe that this smaller building in the front has helped negotiate the scale and mass of the main building. And that's seen here, right here. And that's the trash enclosure. And behind that is a covered bike parking area. Looking at the site plan, here's phase 2A already approved. Here's phase 1 apartment building that is in existence. And we have a arched road up to the main entry. We've kind of consolidated some of the footprints in the roadway, tighten that up with tightening up the building to the grades and pushing it a little bit downhill and maneuvering it slightly. But you can see the 2 covered parking spaces here. The main parking space is here under the main volume of the building. Sprinkler room, and we've reduced the footprint of the building from the back to help with the earthwork and minimizing that as well. But it steps out when it goes a story up, so you'll see that. These are the 2-story 1-bedrooms. Here's the dumpster area that we're discussing here, and I'm going to move up to a consolidated floor plan sheet that basically shows first, second, third, and the roof. The parking was seen in the site plan there. So this is steps back onto the hillside from the retaining wall below, which is consistent with this back wall, the heated part of the units. And here's your stairs up. And again, we believe that some of the modulation here with the roofs help from various vantage points to the scale and mass of the main apartment complex. Here are the breakups of the roof elements, and then the step that we had in the prior submission is seen here in the corner, where that corner is pushed back. Moving on to the materials, no changes in the materials. We have the front elevation here. You can see the stepping of that fourth level over the podium. The stepping of the roof, breaking up of the roof plane here, and stepping back of the roof, and then the stepping down here in front of that corner unit. And then over here, you can see how this smaller building in the front does help the overall massing of the overall complex. But also, we pulled the parking out where it's more conducive to people grabbing their bike and going down the hill and going into town. Made a lot of sense. And then the storage, the trash unit next to it, and then car parking there for these 2 units. So all the parking is covered. Very few changes here, but you can see that the roofs of the 2-story element has been reduced and shifted to work better with grades, the overall massing. Side views and the retaining walls have been greatly reduced on the west side. And the east side, you can see how that element is tucked tighter into the grades, and shifting the building has helped with that. And having this roof slope down toward the entryway and a driveway, we believe was a good move as well for that. Moving on to some of the other vantage points on the front page that we saw. Here you can get just a different vantage point looking slightly southeast of the modulation of the roof. Again, the corner breakup and then the diminishing of the mass over here at the entry of the two-story wings as well. This is a view obliquely and kind of straight at the east facade, the entry road. And then you can see that smaller building in the front and how that would have trash enclosed. And behind that, there's the bike parking and the covered parking here and the reduction and the minimization of all the retaining walls on the east and the west. I think that might be it. Questions?
I have a question, Jim. Could you go to your western elevation drawing? I was looking at the location of the low eave roof, and it looks like it's connected to the roof below it instead of the high roof. Zoom in to the upper right-hand corner of that drawing. Yeah, right there. So the lower dashed line, if you track that across, you're calling that as the low roof, but that's actually a different roof than the highest roof.
Yes, that's step down. The highest roof is in the center.
So your measurement would need to go from the bottom of the eave to the highest roof. It's about 14 inches taller than what you've got shown. That's minor, but it does put it just slightly over the.
Low point is for the high roof form, not the low point of the project. Highest form.
So it's a nuance. It's
Yeah.
just something to, I think,
Mhm.
correct that we see it
Thank
next
you.
time.
That's for the top, for the outfit. Yeah, and that can be easily.
Yeah. It's 6 inches, 7 inches.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for complying with that.
Well, it's probably only 3, right? It's 6 and then that gets it cut. Because it's a midpoint. Anyway,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's minor. Be over the liable height as is, but it would be a minor adjustment to bring it.
Anything else? Yeah.
It's the only other questions I have. Actually, I do. One more question. So I believe the wetlands have some significant trees in there from a site visit. Just confirming that is the case, right? I'm not imagining those trees were spot. They're not showing up on any of the survey drawings.
We didn't have the trees yet.
And just make a comment though,
Survey.
that's gonna help block the screening of this project
Yes,
significantly.
there are some significant spruce trees.
Yeah.
In the front there, as noted on that walkthrough.
No other questions? I'll just ask my final one.
And I will note that, you can see, this isn't real, this isn't verbatim, but you can also see how the lower building is also gonna help modulate that form from afar, the 2A phase.
So the last thing I would ask is that you did a good job complying with 9 conditions, taking it down to 3. My only question is well, I'll turn it into a question. We can deliberate, but before we lose you on number 1, you witnessed in many meetings, 2 foot is not normally enough of a step back, especially if we're going up to the 4th floor. Did you consider, or is it problematic to go?
Yeah, so we're looking at the units and we nudged it, the 2 feet. And could it go back further? It's possible.
Yeah.
It's, it diminishes some of the usable square foot. Obviously, you're taking some square feet out. You don't want to push the units back into the hill. So, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, it gives more room to grill out on the deck. Anyway, okay, no questions, so we're gonna move on to public comment. Any public comment? I'm not seeing online. So we'll deliberate. Everybody good with Erica's additions, and you want to add any more direction on number one? I mean, I would think we could approve this in the name of efficiency, because we are gonna see it again. But of course, stepping back has something to do with mass.
I think we've addressed the big ticket items, mass scale roof form.
Okay.
Revise that one calculation.
Guidance on number one, though, and they went 24 inches.
For me, given the site constraints, the relative narrowness of the lot, I think the step back is commensurate with the narrowness of the lot.
I would hope that they could move it back a little further, but it's not like it's 5-10 feet. I mean, it's nothing. So I don't want to be prescriptive at this juncture. But please, best efforts. Any other comments?
I would just agree with that. I think moving it back a little bit more would also help sort of reflect the natural topography better as well. We kind of still abrupt, especially on the west side.
Okay.
I have some other questions or comments here. So there's or just deliberation. There seems to be this sort of partition or demising wall here. Decks, this white thing that's kind of going up.
So it's a solid wall, but we try to lighten it up by doing kind of a slat wall effect.
Finally.
Fortunately, thank you for pointing it out. We're not supposed to be.
Oh, sorry.
Good to know.
So I'm just wondering if that has any heartburn over that one. It's very tall and consistent. And if the fourth floor steps back even further and that stays in its position, do we have any concern over that element seeming out of place? We want that to move back as well, or?
This is Bob. I just got unmuted. Thank you. I had a question for Jim before we got into our deliberations. Hello?
Hey, Bob, since we're in deliberations, can you speak what you'd like to bring up? I know there could have been a
Okay,
technological.
well, you can see it too. If you look at the rendering on the first page that he showed, the roof on the, let's see, what would be the east end of the building. There's no column there. The roof does not step twice. It just goes across, and there's no column at the end of the balcony next to that two-story element that's has a sloped roof. That's different than what's shown on the elevations in the set that we have and the drawings that Jim showed. You see what I'm talking about?
The column on the end of the building is missing on the front, but it's in the elevation.
Yes.
So Jim's showing something different that's in our packet is what I'm.
Uh-oh.
getting at, or-
Yes.
Oh,
This is showing.
well,
You-
hey, Bob, thank you. What are deliberations? Any board comments on that?
Well, I just say I like the version on the rendering. I think it helps break up that big central mass when you look at it from straight on. I was also thinking that the previous design had a shed roof on the far, what would that be? West side? If you've got the old drawings.
Jim, do you have a previous? Yeah. Looking at west elevation?
Something that's happening with your sharing the screen, we're not seeing what's on your computer. Could you stop sharing your screen and then try again?
I have a, do you want me to share? I have a west side elevation. So this is before and then after on the west side. After's over
Okay,
here.
and then it'd be at the other end of the building. That's what I'm looking for. The full front on, would be the south elevation.
Which, Bob, what are you looking for?
The front elevation of the building
Okay.
from the previous design.
Looking south.
Looking north, south elevation.
There. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, it had a small shed roof on it for that last element. And in my opinion, I think that actually breaks up the facade better than just the straight across. So you have that two-story element with a shed roof, and then you've got a shed roof up at the third level of the building, the fourth level off the ground.
I agree with what Bob is saying there. I think that's a more successful stepping down of the corner.
Yeah.
What Jim had on the screen with the column missing and the roof cut back, I thought also is more successful than what we're seeing in the packet. I could see that being applied to the western side or reverting back to that shed roof as a more successful stepping down corners.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. So we would word that, reinsert the, from previous being the west side shed roof at northwest corner. Does that say what we mean?
I think so. Maybe let Bob hear it.
Bob did, so if we said, Bob, on this condition, and do number 4, reinsert west side shed roof at the northwest corner from previous drawings.
Yes.
And
And eliminate the column and the step in that roof on the other end of the building.
that'd be a separate, eliminate the column on the east end, what is that, third floor or fourth floor?
It's in the, as presented in the rendering on the front page of the packet.
Yep.
Out of the packet, with the presentation.
Presentation.
Okay. Eliminate that, okay. Are you talking about on the 2-story building or the 4-story?
He's talking
On
about
4-story.
Yeah, okay.
South, west.
Yeah, I think another way to say it is that on the both of these corners, if the roof can be cut back closer to the wall of the building, that would help the mass and scale step down.
You want to say it that way or eliminate the column? I don't.
I think that what you're
Eliminate the column and the roof
Mass
step or whatever.
They got a guideline for that. And then we'll be finished here. Any of the mass and scale guidelines.
I think it's referring back to the condition number 1.
Yeah.
Okay. AC 2 and SL, okay. All right. 23. Any other?
I think just back to the comment about stepping of the wall plane, I wasn't clear what the outcome was. Stacy, are you saying that you think it's fine at 2 feet, or are you suggesting further step back?
I'm fine with 2 feet. This isn't a 175-foot deep lot or even a 100-foot deep lot. The depth, they have a limited amount of depth to work with. So a minimal setback is commensurate with the constraints of the site.
I see your point. The thing is, to be consistent, I don't remember us having a change in wall plane, and we have to consider the site, to your point, of only 2 feet normally. But like I said in my comments, it's not a 5-foot back. I would suggest supporting staff leaving that language as it is and see what they come up. It's helpful to see it once you set it back. And we're gonna see it again. You can judge and everyone. Good with that. Okay, so we're ready? Well, there aren't any additional conditions. So I guess this is just like the old days.
Does Bob have anything else to add?
Bob, are you good?
Aren't we making a condition for the opposite end to do the shed roof?
Yes?
Okay,
Reinsert the west side shed roof with at the northwest corner from the previous drawings. Okay, I can tell the applicant knows where we're talking. So who wants to make it? I'll just jump in and make it then. The proposed, excuse me, I move to approve. And then we'll see it again. Do we know when we'll see this again?
No.
No, okay. Well, I'll just say I move to approve the preliminary large scale application at 1200 Blackberry Road, Virginia, Placer to be based on the staff memo dated July 17, 2024 with the following conditions: 1, 2, and 3 as written. Number 4, reinsert the west side shed roof at the northwest corner from the previous drawings per AC 23E2 and SL 1A1. Number 5, eliminate the column in the east end 4th story southwest corner for SL1A1 and AC 23E.2. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided public held on July 17, 2024. No such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. I know. Good job. Are there any other conditions? Okay, not.
Karen will second.
Oh, how do you vote?
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Good job, Jim.
The next project, don't go anywhere, is the Tower House Townhomes continuation from January 17th, February 21st, March 20th, and May 15th, 4 continuances. Hearing 3 continuances, HARC meetings. It's consideration application for Tower House Townhome Southwest, a small scale application for a new construction outside of the THLD, which will contain 2,000 square foot or more of floor area, but not more than 5,000 square foot for land use code 7203B2B1. The Tower House Townhome Southeast, a small scale application for new construction outside of the THLD, will contain 2,000 square foot or more floor area, but not more than 5,000 per land use code 7203B2B1. Legal description is lots 31 and 32 Bachman Village, West Telluride, West Unit Tower House condos, and lot 33 Bachman Village subdivision, West Telluride. Address is 650 to 654 West Colorado. Zone District Accommodations 2, owner Block 23 Housing Corp., a Colorado nonprofit. Applicant Norris Design staff member Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you so much. So this is the review for Tower House Townhomes. The application was continued from the May 15th HARC meeting. We received public comment from Sherry and Sandy Gorley and Natasha Summer Burley. Did everyone have time to review these comments?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So just a reminder, this project is located in the Accommodations 2 zone district and the accommodations treatment area and is located outside the historic district. And the project is proposing the demolition of the Tower House condos and the new construction of 3 townhomes. And my computer's frozen. Oh, there we go. So condition 2 from May 15th was to step back the upper level of the east facing gable on the east building. As you can see, the roof form was completely changed from a gable to a shed to an asymmetrical shed roof with a shed-like dormer. The guidelines do state that non-traditional roof forms are inappropriate, and while a shed roof is traditional, this modern interpretation of a shed roof form is not traditional. Condition 3 was to provide more variety in setback, height, color, texture of materials, and building size and form to enhance the pedestrian experience and to reduce the appearance of mass and scale. So a new material was introduced, a metal panel material that does add variety to the building. Condition 4 was to reduce the height of the buildings a full story. So the height of the east building was lowered over 2 feet. The roof form was reconfigured to also reduce the scale. The height on the west was lowered about a foot and the center unit height stayed the same. Both gables were further set back from the second level and the gable on the west in size. HARC should discuss if these changes sufficiently reduce the height and overall mass. Condition 1 from May 15th was to show snow guards on final CA plans, which have been shown on the plans. And condition 5 was to clearly define the primary entrances, and small gable forms were added over 2 of the 3 entry doors. So the new conditions of approval are to revise the roof of the east building to have a more traditional form and to revise the metal panel material to be used in a more traditional hierarchy and more limited amount. The metal is used in large quantities on the north elevation and higher up on the building, which causes concern over increasing the mass. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Questions?
Eric, I have a question about the site.
Yes.
coverage.
So site coverage is being measured from the first floor and not the garage level. The garage is not considered an enclosed space because it's open to light, air, and ventilation. So it, per our definition of site coverage, does not count as site coverage. So site coverage is being measured from the first level of living space. And if we measure from that level of living space, the site coverage is compliant. And I believe the applicants also have a diagram showing their site coverage to show the board as well.
So is this from section -3 for site coverage?
2, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm not seeing anything in there that's saying that this isn't a basement. It's not buried space. It's not hidden in the earth. So I'm not on the surface of site coverage. The lower level garage space is obviously site coverage. So I'm confused why it's not being.
That is just historically not how we have interpreted site coverage. Take a trash enclosure, for example. It doesn't count as site coverage if it's open to light, air, and ventilation on at least 2 sides. So this doesn't have any enclosed living space and it's open to light, air, and ventilation on, I believe, 3 sides. So if we're applying site coverage in the way that we have been applying it, this does not count as site coverage.
There's no citing in the land use citing that says those words. It's just. There's no.
That's in my interpretation of the definition of site coverage in the land use code.
Is there a site coverage calculation diagram?
There was not in the packet. The applicant has provided one for this meeting.
So maybe they'll present this and we can pick that conversation up there.
The questions?
Eric, are the intermediate property lines, especially the property lines on the north side, have those moved since we approved the prior Tower House condominium? No.
The project, yes.
Yeah, the Tower House condos.
Yes,
east and
the
west
lot line
condos.
has moved slightly.
What I read was it only resulted in 9 square foot difference, if I understood it.
And the application to the north is still compliant with all land use
Is there
code
a HARC
requirements.
CA or any other
I just looked at.
subdivision?
Upstairs on that CA and I didn't sign it. Going about.
But that's, I just wanted to, that's.
Yes, the
underway. It's in
applicant,
process.
they're in process of a CA amendment to revise those plans to the north to reflect what's in these plans.
But I do know it was less than the 60%.
Well, that's fine. I just want to, there's a process that I, as an applicant, and held to. I just want to make sure that we're following the prescribed land
Yes.
use code
Mhm.
process.
Well, let's hear from the applicant.
Hello, Jim and Noel from Keo Studio Works. Yes, and Lindsay Newman is on the line and she's gonna start the conversation and the presentation. Lindsay?
Yes. I think I just got unmuted. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Your video is on, but we can't see you.
I was trying to fix that. One moment. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my video. But I am here. Lindsay Newman with Norris Design. Just here to review the design progress that we've made on the Tower House townhomes from the perspectives of neighborhood context, architecture, and site planning. So we're going to take a look at the site plan evolution. The first version of the townhomes, which is the top left photo, was reviewed at a work session back in October of 2023. This building configuration really maximized the site area, both with the footprint and verticality. The parking was primarily on the surface with tandem garage spaces. As we moved into the second, in January of this year, we submitted the large-scale application for the Tower House townhomes. We had listened to the comments that were received at the work session and added some balconies to the southern facade for articulation and pedestrian scale, but the site plan remained wholly the same. So in March of this year, we pulled that large-scale application and we submitted a small-scale application. And we did this by really reducing the overall footprint of the buildings and creating an opening for a pedestrian path between the east building and the center and west units. We came back just this May with a substantial change, and that was taking that surface parking and putting it within a podium parking garage. And that was based on a lot of the conversation that we had heard in terms of pedestrian safety, just the streetscape look and feel, creating more open space and buffer, and places for snow storage. And the site plan that we're looking at today, that was on the right, that has really minor modifications from what you saw in May in terms of site planning. However, the architecture will definitely have some evolution. So we can take a look at, similarly, our architectural evolution over time from starting back in the work session that we came to you in October. So there's 5 versions that are shown on the screen. And we're looking at the view that's facing Tomboy Avenue here. We went to that work session and again, didn't make a lot of significant changes in January. We heard your comments and we pivoted and made a really substantial change to that small scale application in March, where we separated the buildings, we made smaller footprints, started looking at the articulation, the materiality, and just kind of how this was feeling from the Tomboy Avenue streetscape. And then again, we created that substantial design change as the parking was moved into a podium in May and screened from view. So in March, it was still surface with those tandem garages. And then in May, and what's in front of you tonight is in that podium open air podium, which is screened from view, but not fully enclosed. So we'll be looking at current elevations that will match what you see on the far right there. And you can just see that through this evolution, we have created a lot of increase in articulation, reduction of the height, and a lot of different roof variations and changes in materials. Little trip down memory lane for us. So starting, just looking at the conditions and comments we've heard over time, the top row shows the previous work session. We had quite a few comments that we took into consideration as we submitted our preliminary large scale in January on the second line. We had 13 conditions. And I think that based on those conditions was when we really made that pivot to the small scale and opening up the site more and trying to let it breathe and start thinking about pedestrian connectivity and streetscape. We did receive 14 conditions at that hearing with the new site plan, which isn't, you know, to be surprised about with a brand new site design and architecture. So, but then after that, we started to see a resolution of conditions on those last two rows from left to right, as we are here tonight on the bottom row with two remaining conditions that were received from staff.
I just want to comment, staff did ask the board to consider the old number 4, the height of the building. Even though they didn't list this condition, they put it on us to decide.
Say that again, please, Mark.
Yes, the old number 4 on the height of the building. She said there are only 2 conditions left. Staff clearly asked the board to consider the old number 4, the height of the building, and that we should discuss this and analyze. There's more height reduction needed since it didn't comply with.
That's the condition that was removing or to remove the 4th level.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I was just saying we received 2 from staff.
Yep.
Additionals may come from HARC, of course. We understand that. That was just based on our staff report. So looking at the context of our building, we are the number 5 that's shown on this site plan here. We see all the buildings that are adjacent to the Tower House townhomes are at least 3 stories in height, as they are permitted per the accommodations 2 district to be up to 35 feet using the land use code. We have nearby properties of note shown in darker blue, and these are at or over 35 feet. And this includes the more recently built Mendota, which is 35 feet plus over a parking garage. And then the White House, which is also 3 stories over parking. We also have added in the Owl Meadows, which is just slightly off the page, but directly to the west here. And that's actually a 4-story building. The light blue signifies 3-story buildings, and then white is unknown, and then gray, which are primarily as you head towards the historic district, are 2 stories. So through our thorough analysis of the neighborhood and based on these building height findings, the team has determined that the proposed building is consistent with the context of the neighborhood and the buildings found traditionally in the neighborhood per AC 23H. Many of the adjacent properties have buildings that present as 3.5 stories directly adjacent to the right-of-way, and they don't have the same articulation and step backs that we are proposing on the southern side of the townhomes. Some of the other buildings that are a little bit older were constructed when the maximum height in the AC2 district was 40 feet rather than the current maximum height of 35. And so we've reduced our average height for the townhomes to 33 feet and 2 1/8 inches. That's our average height. We understand Tower House is viewed as a separate HARC application from the condos, but this site was developed as one holistic site with the condos to understand how we could create a transition from Colorado Avenue away from that primary streetscape. So we intentionally developed below the average height on the condos so that we could step down as we went towards Colorado Avenue from the townhomes. And that was kind of our concept from the beginning. That would be a little bit taller as you move further away from Colorado, and then we would respect that streetscape and that view as you move closer to Colorado. We also went back, we were in Planning Commission early this year with our PUD request, and they did find it appropriate to increase our allowed height on this site to 40 feet for the rear half of the site, which is set back quite a bit from Colorado Avenue. But we have chosen not to use this based on our feedback and discussion with HARC. And again, our average height is below 35 feet. It's 33 feet, 2.5 So from the first couple drawings that we looked at, the first 3 meetings, we've lowered our height close to 7 feet. We were pushing 40 feet right up against it. I think we were 39.98 feet. And this is essentially a story over the course of the comments we have received since October 18th. And that's just pursuant again to the HARC direction we have heard and following the guidelines that we have been discussing. So that's just a little history on the context and where we're at. We can flip over to the site plan again quickly. We really haven't created a lot of changes, but just want to reiterate that our site plan has remained the same. We still have a proposed sidewalk along the western side of the property that will connect down to the sidewalk that's proposed along Tomboy Avenue. After hearing a lot of neighborhood feedback and concerns over safety and connectivity, we have one access drive into our garage, which allows us to have substantial landscaping along the southern entry and snow storage, and also that north-south pedestrian pathway that's highlighted in red. And with that, I can turn it over to Jim for some more discussion on architecture, and I will be here to answer any questions at the end.
Hello, thank you, Lindsay. So yeah, we'll walk through some of these modifications and different view angles, 3Ds, elevations, and maybe even toggling back and forth to the prior elevations. This is the looking toward the east from the south. View of the building with the some main moves here are the east and the west roof elements. This stair moved from the middle out to help relieve the streetscape in the front and just give some relief and more balance to the facade. 3 doors are now evident on the south facing facade. 2 of them have slight gable elements, and the third is here under this protected.
Could you zoom in
of the
just a
deck.
little closer? Might as well use the full screen. Thank you.
So yeah, so another change was the fencing is a little more open, continuing to utilize just a wire mesh that's powder coated to a similar tone as the roof, bronze color, and then the addition, or not the addition, but the continued use of architectural accoutrements, the collar ties that are on the decks incorporated here, adding to a level of detail along with the kickers throughout the project that you can see on some of the other facades. Moving to a few other views, a view to east on Tomboy. These were reversed in your packet, my apologies, but the view west as well, using some imagery from the site and the surrounds, giving you an indication of the tactility of the building and the street facade as it meets the street and above the podium, and it steps back here, quite evident to the east and as well to the west, stepping, and then the breaking up of the 2 east and west buildings with a walkway in between, and coupled with this, different from your packet, on this same page is the east view from Tomboy, the streetscape, and the streetscape also at south at the bottom of the page. Again, highlighting the moving and cleaning up, pushing that stair off to the east, and then the modifications here of the roof elements.
Jim, while you got that, the center building did not change in height in this round. It is tallest in the neighborhood, right?
Lindsay, is that a correct? Are we the tallest in the neighborhood from a?
No. We're not. Our average height is 33 feet and Mendota's 35. We also have quite a few other taller buildings if we wanted to look back on that. Context graphic.
I'm gonna quickly mark it, UK, moving on.
You can keep on going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Again, go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, no, sorry. We can come back to that.
So another composite here, I think it's pretty easily to review the site plan here. The parking, the outline of the heated floor area above the open garage is what we're calculating. We can get to that diagram if need be. And then the entryways, clearly these entryways have moved to the front of the building. We've actually, this entryway that was on the south facade was pushed back a fair amount. We've pushed these out so they're very evident on the front at that first level of living. And then another level, and then the roof level here is shown. These two areas have been reduced substantially in mass and scale and square footage. Moving on to the elevations, we can see that the, I'm gonna just toggle here. This is the prior submission that we reviewed on the 15th of May. And you can see that the differences in the building, you know, focus on the stair, the entry doors. This was not an entry door, but it is now. And then the roof elements and including some of the facade changes here with the colors and the various materials as well. Highlighting some of the changes here in the roof at the west and the east. I'm going to move on to the next page and do the same negotiation here of the prior scheme and layers. Yes, this was the prior submission viewed on the 15th. We had the doors in the center. Move the doors out, have kickers, and the roof elements here on the east building, pushing back, stepping the building further back on the south and on the east here as well. Moving on to some 3D views. So this is the collection of the 3D views from the main focus areas of the building from the west and south. In the east, the stepping down of the building as it drops down behind the condos, and how this sort of skewed shed roof helps accomplish for us a dipping down of the roof element, and then the dormer shed above, and that is pushed back considerably from the face of the wall. So we have consistently steps in the facade on that east. Jumping over here to the west, you can see how that roof shed drops down to the corner, steps out. There's a deck there, and then also here how the roof modulates and pushes down toward the west as well, and back from the south side, and very evident here in the front of the building facing south, and then the vantage point here looking to the northwest at this. You can see the stepping here of the west element, diminishing the mass and scale from the pedestrian scale of sensibility and perspective. You can see how these two facades in the moves of modulating the materials also aid in that. Moving on to some, here you can see that there is a fair amount in this lower right corner, you know, the stepping back and the pushing and the modulation of the roofs really aid to this structure, breaking down its mass comparably to some of the surrounding neighboring buildings. And then looking at the view from downtown Bowie from Colorado, upper right corner, you can see how some of those moves may be slightly unorthodox, but still shed and shed elements help really create a stepping of the mass.
How many feet off Colorado are we? Elevation view?
I believe this is the sidewalk on the other side of the street right here.
No. We are off of the others of the
South side. How many feet off the south side the building is from the roadway? About 80. And then view a couple different vantage points here as well. Again, pushing and modulating the south facade. And we've already reviewed. These are the streetscapes. This is the one we hadn't seen from Colorado. Down at the bottom of the page. I would like to, if there's no other comments on this, open the 3D model initially of the building itself. Blob out of there. There you go. So this we can see some of the stepping there on the east and how the corner on the east and the west are stepping back. We did modulate this. This deck, we flipped the deck on the east. Reverse the modulation here. It steps back even more. This is the shed roof of that roof level form. The ground, the white blobs are what shows up as entourage in the 3Ds. And then the west facade and how that roof element is been pushed back on the west and to the south. We'll come down Tomboy and look at the view to the south on the east side here. And I'll point out the movement of the stair. It used to be in the middle, now it's off to the side, creating a little more balance and putting that not straight in front of the walkway.
when we further discussion and there was a letter from the public, and we had some dialogue about when I see those two large set of exterior stairs, the point of discussion, is there a way to consolidate those into
A single stair?
one and just let practice be one rather than
Yeah, I could envision something like that occurring.
uh-huh.
And it might end up in the middle.
Okay, you don't have to say.
Yeah.
Keep going
But
with your
I think
presentation.
that it could be something we look at, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm close to complete with the presentation, and I can move around and take questions.
So questions for that one, then?
I have a couple, I have two. So staff in the memo described that southeast building form roof as an asymmetric shed, although it wasn't described that way in your narrative. Do you feel like that's an accurate definition or term to describe that roof?
I would call it an asymmetric shed is an okay analysis. It's a variation on a shed roof where we're really trying to pull it down at the corner and have a high. So the high side is we take, instead of, a low full on side, we're using the corners as a way of.
I think I'm clear on what you're trying to accomplish. Do you feel like an asymmetric shed is a traditional roof form?
I think it can have the appearance of a traditional roof form in perspective of the pedestrian. Taken on, as you can see it here, it does appear to be a shed from the two main facades that the apparent perspective of the building would be seen.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And then I sort of piggyback on what you were talking about with Mark with the stairs. I don't want to conflate our purview, which is the design guidelines, with building code, but I think having a stair that's basically at the lot line, you're going to run into combustible construction issues. And strange as it may sound, steel is not non-combustible. We run into that in setbacks all the time. I think it would be advisable to at least try to move that back as far from the sidewalk as the eastern stair is. Stairs are tricky. That'll probably be a challenge, but coming at it from the pedestrian experience, AC6 would be a good idea. And then while it doesn't speak to stairs in the front yard setback, I think most of the intent of AC16 would be to try and move that building element as far away from the pedestrian. Sorry, that wasn't a question. Pontificating, I apologize.
Any other questions?
Nope, that's the only two.
I think Erica mentioned you guys have a diagram about your site coverage. If you could explain that.
So given the understanding that site coverage is the enclosure of predominantly the heated building footprint, and this isn't qualified as a basement. This is the diagram, and there is the above here is the calculations. If you want me to zoom into.
So you're having that is tracking with your second level enclosed space, not the first level garage.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. And the way, we're looking at this too is previously the parking was sitting on the site in front of the building. So by tucking it back under the building, but still keeping it open, we're helping to screen it from view. We're accomplishing a few things by screening it from view and also opening up that front area for pedestrian access while still keeping the parking open. So while it's not a true enclosed structure, it does help achieve some of our site goals.
Mark, may I? or Matt, I just want to clarify, it tracks with wherever there is enclosed floor area. So if there is a third story bump out, bay, whatever, that's, yeah. So not necessarily the first.
Okay, thank you. One other question, there's a public comment letter asking about drainage retention on site and commenting that in previous P and Z approvals, there were trench drains and on-site dry well or some other ways to mitigate that. I wonder if you could describe what your plan is for retaining all the drainage on site.
Lindsay, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So, of course, we have less surface area at this point that's impervious, so that's helpful to where we're headed. And we can still have dry wells on site at the south. We are handling all of our on-site drainage on our site. Off-site drainage issues, you know, we're not necessarily going to be able to fix those with this project. Some of those are bigger issues that don't involve the runoff from our site specifically. But we do have those landscape areas along the southern property line that have now gotten bigger that will aid in our detention areas and dry wells. If we need a trench drain still, I'm not sure if we will with that one smaller entrance point. We're also going to have drainage in our garage because, you know, since it's not fully enclosed, we'll need to manage that as well.
We've discussed trench drains in the garage and at the entryway.
Thank you.
Other questions? I appreciated many of the steps you've made. My last question would be, and it's what other projects that around you have underground parking, but wow, it's meeting over in 15 minutes. You know, if there was, did you consider that here? As per the sorts, many of the surrounding buildings, which also have parking, same site.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, the parking is partially buried to the north along that side. So it's very similar to how the Mendota parking works, where it's partially buried, but then it's also, you know, I think it shows it on the building height slide there, Jim. We have a picture of that Mendota parking garage, which is right next door, and very similar type of garage. Yeah, number 9 there. So you can see how a lot of it does still protrude above ground and along that rear line there as well. So it's kind of the same idea as that, and we're sort of modeling after that and just working with the grade and topography of our site and our access point. We're taking access off of the southern end, so that's just kind of how it's working. But the northern portion of our garage will be buried into the site. So it does, you know, that's the enclosed side of our garage, of our enclosed parking podium structure.
That's probably the exception to the rule. I mean, there are Tomboy Lodge and other areas that are fully underground. That's why I asked. And they did it on the same site. So I just asked the question, did you consider?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? I guess, Bob, any questions, Bob?
Nope.
Okay, let's hear from the public. If you come up, we ask you to have your comments 3 minutes or less, please, and Piper will be timing. And who would like to come up first?
If there's nobody in the room, I've got someone online.
Yes, I see Sherry early online. So Sherry, if you want to unmute and please, we received your letter, but please amplify the highlights and if you can in 3 minutes.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So thank you, first of all, for considering our comments once again. I'd like to just talk about here for a second site coverage. So the applicant is saying that the garage is not an enclosed space, so it shouldn't be included. It shouldn't be used as the basis for calculating site coverage. We disagree with that. Under the applicant's interpretation of 2-234 of the Telluride Land Use Code, essentially they couldn't cover the entire site with an open garage. They could do 100% coverage of the site with an open garage under their interpretation. We think they're simply misinterpreting the Telluride Land Use Code for their own benefit. And with regards to Mendota, I think it would be interesting to see how the Mendota site coverage was calculated. The completely open design of the garage with the transparent metal screens doesn't comply with the hierarchy of materials requirements of the design guidelines, which specify that heavier, coarser materials should be used as foundations and more refined materials should be used above. So hopefully HARC will require the applicant to comply with that provision of the design guidelines. Further, we find it kind of interesting that in the May 15th packet, which has just been kind of brushed over, the applicant did calculate site coverage based on the garage level and not on the first level. In the May 15th package on the larger lots, which were produced by sort of taking some of the land from the condos lots, the site coverage was calculated at basically 59.9%. Now that the applicant has had to reduce the size of the townhome lots, magically the site coverages are less than 59.9%. It doesn't make any sense that the same building footprint on smaller lots has smaller site coverage. So it kind of looks like the applicant is playing a shell game here. Further, it's perceived from the ground, the garage will definitely appear to be the portion of the building that is at grade. Presumably HARC will ask the applicant to comply with the hierarchy of materials requirement and better enclose the garages, which will make it even further look like an enclosed space at ground level. So I heard that the way that section 2-234, the Telluride Land Use Code was applied is that things that are open to the air are not considered as part of site coverage. So are those misapplications referring to things like trash enclosures, which are completely different structures with no levels above them? Has that ever been applied to a situation where the buildings are already completely maxed out on site coverage? It'd be interesting to hear actual examples that justify the incorrect interpretation of that portion of the land use code. And further, incorrect application of the land use code in the past should not justify incorrect application in this.
Okay. Terry, I'm sorry, we've reached the 3-minute. Do you have a final word? If not, we're going to go on to the, although I don't see another comment.
Yeah, I think that is my primary comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Who else in the public would like to speak?
We've got Sandy Gorley this time.
Okay. Please
Hello,
unmute.
Commission.
Yes.
Can you hear me, please? Yes. Hi there. This is Sandy Gorley. Our address is 121A South Tomboy Drive. We really do appreciate your careful consideration of this component of this project. I'll certainly reinforce what my wife said, and I'll try not to repeat it here. I was pretty surprised to hear the interpretation that this parking garage is, and it can be analyzed or even should be analogized to a trash enclosure for the reasons my wife suggested. Trash enclosures don't have 3-story buildings built on top of them. Hope the commission is as skeptical as I am about this newfound historical interpretation of the land use code. It apparently wasn't known to the applicant or the staff at the May HARC meeting for the reasons described when the land, the site borrowed land from the condos project in order to achieve the 60%. So this appears to be a convenient identification. So we'd ask the commission to satisfy itself that this is the historical interpretation, and to consider what the precedent is that adopting it here would set. We also think it's just going to be kind of awkward that this interpretation is reached in a manner that is self-serving to the town's interest as a developer partner. Finally, this is important, I guess. This is a tight site. This whole project is tight, and I hope that everybody appreciates the fact that we're very concerned that this site not be overbuilt for the benefit of this overall project, and that's really the basis of our primary concern. We thank you for considering all the other aspects of our comments, and appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public? Yes, come on up to the podium and your name into the mic.
Yes, it's Patty. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Patty McIntosh with Telluride Lodge, and I do commend, I think it looks a lot better. So I think the architect has come a long ways from when we first started out. But I agree with Sandy saying it's a really tight space, very small. So I don't want to, I agree with whatever Sandy said. And I agree with Mark. I don't understand why they can't do underground parking. And one other thing, it's misled that the largest structure in the neighborhood is Telluride Lodge. And it's not 3 stories, it's a 2-story project. Thank you.
Thank you. We have online Natasha Summer-Burley.
I've asked her to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I've sat through all the meetings for this this design and expressed numerous concerns over the specific designs, as I'm a property owner that actually shares the boundary with this design. And we just seem to have been going around in circles, never quite addressing all the issues in one complete design. So at the beginning of this meeting, of your presentation today, you acknowledged that your February design was in excess of 39 feet. But then you also acknowledged that you were that now you've got it down to not exceeding 35 feet, which was the guideline. So apologies for my frankness, but as this is the property that will assist with the funding of all the surrounding projects that have already been approved, it feels like that you've always been pushing and interpreting the relevant guidelines and zoning to suit so you can get the most money out of this development. And I'm just disappointed with watching how the other projects have been a lot more streamlined. And yeah, like it was talk about reduced from 4 to 3 last time, and that really hasn't been done. You've just put the car parks back underneath. And I just don't really feel like you're listening to the perspective of the people that actually live and have lived in that street over 30 years, how it's going to affect them. So yeah, I don't feel like it's come as far as all the other ones. And as this will directly affect us and overshadow us, yeah, I don't really know what to say. Just disappointed, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Don't see anybody virtually. Okay, would the applicant like to rebut and comment to the public comments? None? Okay. Okay, we'll start deliberations. Let me start this off, because if it was adjudicated and staff has given their opinion to be non-land use code compliant, we're not even supposed to hear this. However, I'll just throw this out here. Trash enclosure is one thing. We have seen carports where we can find or count in site coverage, but to the public's comment, 3 stories on top. It's not written. I'm not sure there is a past precedent 3 stories on top of a garage floor that I can think of, not in my 9 years that I can remember. So I don't know if there is a precedent. I certainly acknowledge a 1-story carport doesn't count. This is different. So I'm not sure. I'd like to get the board's input on this.
Here's what I wrote. There's what I just wrote down. I said, as a HARC member, I understand they are land use code compliant. Determining compliance is not the role of our commission. It's the role of staff. As an applicant who's been working in town for nearly 15 years, I can think of a host of projects, not on this scale, but like you brought up, carports, bicycle enclosures, criteria, I think, are consistent with what I'm seeing here. Other things that, as an architect, I've gotten approved. Again, different scale, things built on top, but that none of those criteria are listed in the land use code. So determining compliance, it's not even something I want to even have the conversation.
Well, I would say the director of preservation, fine, comment or see it that way.
Well, and that's,
So, I mean, there
That's
could be
fine, but it's-
various interpretations, I guess.
but determining the compliance is not my role.
Okay. Any other comment on this subject?
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with you, Mark. Reading site coverage definition, site coverage means that portion of a lot or parcel is covered by buildings. It goes on into some more detail. There's provisions for basements that are made, but I'm not seeing the connection of a carport or trash enclosure exception to this project. It's the ground level parking structure is obviously a building. It's obviously a part of the site. It's not a little piece or an anomaly. So I can't wrap my head around the way they're kind of site coverage being accurate.
We could also look at the definition of enclosed parking, which means a parking space or spaces which meet the standards of section 3109, which just walks through compliant parking spaces, and which are enclosed by a minimum of 3 walls and a roof. And my interpretation is that those are not walls because they're open to light and air.
Unlike the design guidelines, I would agree with Stacy that it is staff's job to tell us what's land use, even though this seems a little gray and we had or either lack of opinion or a different opinion by the previous. However, big picture, I don't think it makes much difference except for the center building anyway.
Well, that was going to be my other.
Yeah, I mean,
Part of what's making this difficult is there's no substantial diagram to support.
well, it
the
goes to
conversation.
66% on the center.
I know, but I'm used to seeing a fairly detailed diagram showing an outline and a hatched area. I mean, there was one that was there up on the screen for a second, but we didn't get a zoom in time with it. We're really only talking probably about a few little slivers where the parking area extends beyond the footprint of the living space above. Is it enough to push, if that was all counted, would be enough to push it over 60% perhaps, but at the end of the day, it's small amounts of square footage that we're talking about, yes.
I think small amounts, but they already got a variance to go to 60 and now they're pushing over 60 in all of these lots. And I think this is
Understood.
a stretch to its interpretation of this basement piece does not count as a building. To me, it's obviously a building. Obviously part of the building.
Bob used to be the preservation architect director in this town. Do you have any opinion?
I never saw anything like this before, I have to say.
Okay, so there's not much
But
precedent.
I don't, not during my time, but you know, the idea that you can not count it because it has all this open screen. Okay, I can get that. But do we want that? Do we want to allow that's not consistent with, as it's been brought up, I think, by the neighbors, it's not consistent with the guidelines in terms of having a heavy metal, wood, stone, whatever, concrete base for the building. I can't think of one project that I know of that even an individual carport, I guess, well, an individual carport would be, but on a large scale building where it's all open as much as it can be. And I'm not sure that that's consistent with the guidelines.
Yeah, this is a new one for all of us, and including the applicant. I mean, I think we're all trying to look at this objectively. But I guess I concur kind of with Matt and you that this is not a carport with 3 stories on top. But then again, to Stacy's point, actually, I don't know the legal answer to that. If we're allowed to interpret design guidelines, that's our job. But on land use code, maybe Ally, can you
So at
counsel
this
us?
point, yes, at this point, it is the purview of staff to determine whether or not the application is complete and is ripe for your review. Staff has determined that it is ripe for your review, that this is a complete and compliant application. I would encourage you to stick to the guidelines and review this in accordance with the guidelines and not with under a completeness review, which is the purview of staff.
Okay. And when we rewrite the land use code someday, we probably just should clarify things like this, which you've already suggested doing. So that's 3 to 5 years from now. As I said at the council meeting, I won't be here. So, okay. So let's proceed with the design guidelines interpretation. And right now what we have were the conditions, 1 and 2. We've already had some discussion about the lingering of were 3 and 4 met, and staff challenged us as a board to look at those and see if we felt they complied with these changes. And there were a lot of changes. So that's the good news. So who wants to start? 3 being variety and setbacks and heights, color textures, and 4 being our old 4, the height of the building, which actually, you know what, we should start with that one because this is everything about mass and scale.
I think.
Bob, go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I think that, they've done a good job of breaking it up more than, what we had before. I want to talk about the east building roof separately. But in general, I think it met what we were looking for in terms of breaking up the building and the roofs are a little lower than what they were before. So I'm okay with that condition, I guess, that we don't need to add. And if you want to talk about the 4th one, which I think is the roof on the far east building, I hear what Jim is saying about that. To me, a double sloped shed roof just is not consistent with our guidelines and with the history of the town. It's, to me, I've seen a lot of those. It's more like a 1960s mid-century modern roof. And so that roof became a gable or whatever, more consistent with the other roofs, I think it'd be a lot better. I think it would be more consistent and comply with
Number 1.
Condition number 1.
Yeah. So you agree with Erica? Yeah. Well, let me just as a footnote remind everybody, we heard it, but the west building was lowered 1 foot and the east building 2 feet, and the center was not lowered at all. And so the prior condition said eliminate the 4th story. This one said reduce the height of the buildings a full story. I mean, so twice in a row, that's what we've said. Did we mean it? Thought we did, but.
Yeah.
Bob, you kick it off since you got the floor.
Well,
there's no 4th story and there's no 4th story in the guidelines that I can find.
No, I think that there was a couple of projects in the neighborhood that it was like a 3.5, like it was a 2nd floor, you had a gable roof and it might have been a 2-story space inside the gable. Does that make sense? So it's not actually a floor. And I think that that's what we were looking for with that eliminate the 4th floor. In my understanding of what we were talking about before. Does that make sense?
Yes. Matt, why don't you go ahead? What's your belief?
Jim, could you bring up sheet A100, the site elevations, and zoom into the upper Tomboy streetscape? Great, thank you so much. So when I look at the streetscape and I look at the heights of the recently approved buildings and I look at Mendota, this seems to me, especially the center gable, to be the tallest peak in this relative view here. I think that combined with the adjacent buildings are really 3 or 3.5 stories. You know, Mendota at this level steps down to about 3 stories or so, and it's set back from the sidewalk a bit there with its decks. It just seems to me that the mass and scale is still a little too tall overall. And I feel that the eastern building with this new asymmetric shed form, as Stacy, I think, was alluding to, is and Bob, was not really the appropriate solution for this area. I'm also just, while I have the floor, going to dive in a little bit. I think this view is helpful looking at the parking structures. We're essentially, this view, we're sort of the same size, or actually a little bit taller than Canyonlands Northwest building.
Jim, could you zoom in on that while he's speaking? Sorry, Matt, I just wanted everybody to see it.
Well, I was actually trying to see to
Left.
compare both.
Oh, okay.
Buildings together. I think the view we have is great. We asked them to enclose the sides of that parking structure to help screen it from the public view. It's really just facing its own sort of backyard. I think it's appropriate to ask the same thing on this building, especially screening it on the east and western sides. I do think having some of it open air, and especially on the southern side to some degree, is appropriate to get light and air to move through the space. But I'm worried this is just going to feel like a 3-story building floating on top space with cars and skis and storage and whatnot underneath without screening it. And there was a public comment letter mentioned this, and also you can refer back to AC 20A and AC 30 for guidelines on screening parking and having a little bit more of a rustic base. I don't have an issue with the board foam concrete or the mesh. I think the materiality is appropriate on this ground level. I just think it needs to be a little bit more enclosure, really similar to what happened on actually both of the Canyonlands projects. We enclosed both those sides.
East and
West, and some degree the south. I think the Mendota project is a good example of that. Project is much more buried in the ground than this, but it is relatively open on the sort of the upper level of the southern side, and a bit at the entry and a bit on the western side, which you can't see from anywhere. Sorry, the eastern side.
On this topic, let's go right down the line and finish it then on the height and.
Well, for me, they're under the 35, and not just barely. They're at 34'1". They're 11 inches. At least per the calculation given on the elevation.
The center building is the highest at 30.
Sure.
Which is what he.
But the building has on each side, which are more apparent from the pedestrian way. A 34'1". UD allowed up to 40, which they're not even going there. For me, it's compliant.
And the garage enclosure?
Well, the more enclosed it is, the more it exacerbates the question of, is it enclosed space or not?
And does it add to mass and scale?
I think there could be a hybrid where, because the guideline does talk about foundation material as being heavier. These screened walls are not foundation. But if a portion of wall was brought up to 3 or 4 feet that was foundation, that perhaps was some stone or it's heavy, and then it was mesh above that.
They do have a portion of that.
I know, but if that was maybe used more, it would have a heavier base. It would be less of the material, it'd be less of the mesh material, it'd be more screened. Perhaps some of that hierarchy could be spoken, the guideline that speaks to hierarchy could be more satisfied. 30A1. Heavier, coarser material used as foundations. Well, the screened walls aren't foundations.
Right.
So
bring it up a couple feet and then continue with the mesh.
I think so.
You okay with leaving the south side open like suggested? Okay.
I think some degree of bringing up that foundation, south side, to help snow and just the kind of backdrop for the landscaping makes sense, but I think if the majority of it was open, I think that would be okay. I don't want to get to the percentage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kiernan, while we're going,
Sure. I don't think it's possible for me to agree more with Matt without becoming Matt. So,
oh,
yeah.
There you go.
I like Matt.
He
Right
had,
now, just that comment.
I don't know what else you got going for you.
Okay. Bob.
So we're
the-
proposing that the east and west side of the parking level be partially solid and partially open. And the south side reduced some of the open space. I guess, I think Matt's comment about snow piling up there makes sense to not have that go all the way down on the outside edge on the south side. It may help break that up. I know we're not the land use code issue, but if it's more solid, does that create a problem? I don't know. And I do think that the what they've done with the top level with the gables I think it works. It doesn't feel like a 4-story building because of the gables. You know, it's reduced the mass at top. And I think if they did something similar on that east building, you know, I think it would be much more consistent with the guidelines. I don't think that the double shed roof is right.
Okay. I guess I'll go last. I think we're 2/3 the way there. Figuratively speaking. Don't take that as a 66 point or 67.3%. But my belief is, first of all, I agree with Stacy and Matt that a little stronger foundation coming up with a little heavier mesh screening. We'd like to see pictures of that. West side, I think leaving the south open is a good idea, just like some of our.
Can I interrupt you? What do you mean heavier mesh screening?
Well,
you want the actual material thicker or?
Well, heavier gauge. I think that you need the openings, but well, I'm not gonna fall on my sword on what gauge.
I have no problem with the materiality they're proposing.
Okay,
for the mesh.
well, scratch that. I'm not making a condition out of it, but I was just, okay. But where I do believe they're short of the guidelines is that if we're gonna have and that was a good move to put these gables on the 4th floor. We don't even have a guideline that has a 4th floor, but it's starting to look like 3.5. I believe that if you lowered just 2 things, I think you could get real close to compliance here. You lowered the center building to the same height as the others, 34'1", and you set back further this quote 3.5 or 4th floor. I guess I'm just going to say it's a 4th floor, but set it back further so you see a more significant articulation of that wall. I think we could get to compliance. So the height of the center core, further back setbacks of all 3 buildings, especially on the, of course, north side, I think it could get there. And so I'm talking about small height on one building, and I'm talking about setbacks on the top floor.
How about the roof form on the east building?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna agree with Erica. I mean, I like what it did. But the guidelines say it has to be more traditional looking, and we haven't seen one of these. So I can't.
I thought Jim's answer to my question was very logical He was obviously prepared for that question. From a certain pedestrian stand from viewpoints, perhaps it would appear to be a shed roof. Unfortunately, there are other viewpoints we're blessed with in town, not to,
Well,
not necessarily only including the gondola and other elevated areas in town. I mean, it's not a traditional roof form, cut and dried, plain and simple.
well, I mean, if that went a few feet further back and it remained as the main viewing point is from this north side, it looks traditional. I almost talked myself into walking around the other side and not looking up, but I'm going to agree with Erica and support her. Okay. So I think the rest of everybody seems to do that. So, but would there be support for just simply having the center building match the height of the other two? And setback the third floor facades, fourth floor facades on this north side, so that they look like the guidelines call for. I'm not going to read 5 guidelines, but I'll tell you, when we make the motion, I'm going to read 5 guidelines. They all call for that, and we can't ignore it.
I'd be fine with those conditions.
I agree. Too.
Okay. What else?
What about the stairs?
Oh, thank you, Bob. I mean, if you look at the guidelines and read it, it seems like they should be like most of the other buildings surrounding internalized. That's why I asked the question, just trying to be a voice of reason. Could you at least eliminate them? Or Stacy, I think you were pointing to put them in the middle and recess them or something.
Well, I'm just asking for a bit more compromise. They are right on the property line. I mean, you walk right next to them on the sidewalk, and if you're not looking up, you're gonna whack your shoulder on them. I mean, they're that much of an impact to the pedestrian. And mind you, they will run into building code issues beyond that. But I think they need to be back. I mean, if the southwestern one was set back from the sidewalk like the southeastern one was, that would be an improvement.
Agree.
How about going to one?
Well, that would be a
more.
better improvement.
I think they acknowledged it could be done. I mean, I think we should try it. But what about internalizing it? Like the surrounding buildings?
Well,
cost square footage, but I know.
As an applicant, stairs chew up a lot of usable square footage. And now you have to have one in each unit if it's internal.
I think they add some breaking down of math. But so I don't feel that. I like Stacy's suggestion of the property line, the way Sam has interpreted that in the past. You're going to have which is not going to work. What we're going to want to see.
That's not what we're seeing, right?
Yeah. I think going to one stair would be great, but I don't necessarily think we have to force them to do that.
I like the idea, actually like the visual of the 2 stairs, but I think that one off to the left is just too far out. And if they could be tucked in, it looks like there's some space, where the car is shown, that you may be able to tuck it in a little more. I think that would help a lot.
Let me take a straw poll on this one, because this might be the only 3 more conditions. I had set out and Stacy had chimed in on perhaps doing one stairway setback from the sidewalk in the center of the building. Are we saying, though, from a fire code issue, that would create some problem?
I don't want to say anything about code issues.
Okay. But and setback, Bob will like the aesthetics of 2, but I think from massive scale and clutter, if you can get one stairway to go each way, I think it would be a big improvement to that guideline that Stacy was citing. What number is that?
Well, project isn't cut. It's not like the guidelines anticipated this project. Building 16 building setbacks, the intent of it speaks to the building being set back a distance from the sidewalk.
So you're going to go with setback guideline?
Yeah.
The stairs, okay. What number is that?
16.
pedestrian scale.
And there is also policy 6, pedestrian scale.
Okay, 16 and 6. All right. So what we have on the table is making the center building same height as the other two, setting back the fourth floor further, the exterior stairs issue. Is that it?
The eastern
Oh, yeah.
roof. And I think there's a roof form, and then
Which is-
does it need to step down further, or is it fine? It's kind of hard to imagine what a different roof form due to the height there. I think it should continue to go to step down from that center structure.
Do you want to add to her number 1 and step it down further, or what do you want to add on the traditional form? Is what she said.
I don't think we need to necessarily put step down further because
Okay.
I don't know what their next.
Until we see it, we don't know. Okay. Okay.
Could I also, you guys let me know if you want to add this per the public comment letter, or if it's more of out of our purview. But I would say about the site drainage, add a condition that say demonstrate that all drainage will be detained on site per AC 11.
Well, again, that's compliance. That should be.
Added or not.
I've had applications sent back to me because we didn't have that on.
I think we should add for clarity.
Okay.
Site drainage. I mean, this is so congested in this neighborhood. Okay. So right now I have the height, the roof, and the fourth floor setback. We have the east, west screening and foundations of the garage. Is that all the way around, Matt?
Well, their northern side is just a
Well,
solid board form concrete wall.
okay. Okay. And so adding foundation wall and leave the screening, but put it on the east and west, add it to the east and west. Okay. Consistent with what we did on Canyon Lands and other buildings. Okay. That it?
I would say provide further screening of the parking level per AC 20A and AC 30, and they've heard our comments.
Okay.
If I had to throw out a number, I'd say 50% open on each side and 75% open on the south side.
Okay. Could you craft that condition?
I've already got it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And is that it?
I have a procedural question. Are we gonna continue or approve conditions?
And my belief is we should continue. We got massive scale issues. The
Then-
setback is a huge building.
Then the immediate question is, do we have town manager approval for that?
Well, I talked to Zoe, and so before we get the motion, you can see where this is going. We want to try to help this get to approval. And so we're suggesting that we should have a continuance. We certainly don't want to hit denial, but
Great. I'll just kind of read my little statement that I have. So for all of you, I know you all, but I'm Zoe Donnell. I'm the acting town manager. So with this, and as the application has seen 3 continuances, 4 if you count the one without discussion, from this reviewing body, and therefore has reached its limitation, I, as the acting town manager per Land Use Code Section 5-206C, can provide an exception to this limitation. However, I was not planning to grant that exception. However, unless the applicant consents to a continuance, then I would like you guys to make a decision. So I would leave it up to the applicant and how they feel about the continuance. If we do move to continuance, I would like to see this on the next HARC meeting or special meeting if possible. Then get this going.
okay. And just as a footnote, after they changed architects and changed design, this is
Mhm.
really the second viewing that we've had of this. So I've never had it given an option where the applicant could tell us if we're ever going to continue it or not, but
Mm.
we'll find and we'll ask the question. We're trying to help you get to the finish line. Go ahead, you make your comment.
Certainly. So I've spoken with the applicant, and he is comfortable with a continuance to the August meeting. I would say on behalf of the applicant team, all of the conditions that you have discussed seem eminently reasonable, doable, and possible, and would graciously, humbly request an approval with conditions. I believe that those can be accomplished with Mark's getting the last chance to take a look at these at the CA set. None of the discussion points that you have raised seem challenging at all to achieve. So that's just,
Okay. Thank you for that. And again, you can understand if we've been here 4 times, why we're a little gun shy. And the only other thing I would say, sure, I see they want to get to August, but last time we gave them 2 months. And at the last meeting, I suggested 2 months, and then we said, no, let's do it 1, but they couldn't get there in 2 months. We still got some massive scale issues.
Well, I think that was because they were working on 3 or 4 projects at the same time, and now it's just this one.
Oh, well,
But
I would suggest September.
my question then, Marcus, for you, the roof one is not a small item. That's mass scale.
I know.
It's a kind of a big one. Are you comfortable reviewing that change on your own?
No,
I would like to see that again.
no.
That's not the kind of condition we would normally kick through on an approval.
No, we're going to continue. We're not going to prove it.
Well, I'm just speaking to James'
Oh, okay.
desire.
No, this is a huge project focus point. I want the board's eyes on it. Now, if we get to the finish line next time and there's some tweaks or something, I know how this board feels. So I'm okay, but I think we need to see it. So, but thank you to the applicant for that. I thank Zoe for your permission to do so. And I do personally believe it should go to September. We got 7 or 8 projects waiting that are near probably compliant or ready to be heard. We've done this so many times and they haven't quite gotten it, but I think they're genuinely believing they're gonna get there this time. I want to trust that we will, but I think we should make it September and
Mark,
give some people a chance to get it right.
I believe the applicant only agreed to a continuance if it could be continued to August. I don't think September is an option,
Oh, really?
from my understanding.
Well, isn't it, I think it's the board's decision, right, Ally?
No, so the manager has authorized you to continue it only with the permission of the applicant. So keep in mind that this prohibition on multiple continuances is really to protect the due process rights of the applicant. The applicant needs a chance to appeal rather than leave something in limbo for so long. So if the applicant will consent to a continuance to a date certain, then they have exercised that protection of that due process right. However, the applicant might be better off with just a denial and moving forward with an appeal. So the town manager has authorized you to discuss with the applicant whether the applicant would prefer a continuance or would just at this time prefer a denial and explore other options.
Well, I don't want to get forced into denial, but I've never had to ask permission from the applicant when we named the date that we were going to hear it again. I don't know where that's in this protocol.
So the town manager, again, has said that you can continue it with permission of the applicant.
We got.
So, but the applicant gets to determine whether so you get to work with the applicant as to what that continuance could look like. The applicant might not want a 2-month continuance. They might prefer a denial now to go ahead and exercise those appeal rights.
Okay, so last time I asked for story polls because I thought we could get there on this one, they were not required to, and they didn't. But this time I'm going to ask, would you allow us to review this in September? And then hopefully that makes a full decision. So you guys have enough time to get it right. And we're not going to go to another place. September. No, the applicant doesn't want to do that.
Mark, I believe the town manager said.
I didn't hear the date, September or October,
that
August.
She
I
would
don't
be
think you
interested in
clarified the
continuing,
date.
granting one more
apologize.
continuance, provided the applicant agrees, and that's to August for a special meeting.
Did you say August?
I
or
did say
September?
August. Yep.
Then I missed that.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Well, then we're at the mercy of the applicant. We're going to do what they tell us.
It's fine. Honestly, it's fine.
Okay.
Remember, I'm an applicant.
You're an applicant, you're going to demand when you get heard? I don't know. See how that goes. It's a private developer. Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to make a motion. Matt, you've got okay. What are you passing me for? Want me to pass you my notes? Wait a minute. Am I going to make this?
Looks that way.
I don't normally do this. Okay. And then we'll look for, before we go to friendly amendments, any revisions. And
I'm not even saying it.
not yet. Okay. I move to continue to August, I'm sorry, what date was that?
August 21st.
Yeah, 8/21. The application for a small scale new construction for the Tower House townhomes based on the findings in the staff memo dated July 17th. Following conditions. 1 is written, 2 is written. 3, provide further screening of the parking level per AC 20A and AC 30. 4, demonstrate that all drainage will be detained on site per AC number 11. 5, consolidate the north side 2 exterior stairs into 1 and, oh, sorry, let me start over. Number 5. Consolidate the south side exterior stairs from 2 into 1 and set them back per AC 16 and AC 6. Number 6, last one. Reduce the height of the center building to be no taller than the adjacent ones at 34 foot 1 inch. And set back the 4th floor further on that, on that south elevation per AC 1A 3, AC 23, AC 23A, ACH, AC1, I, ACD are the conditions that apply.
Number 6 with the eastern roof. Oh, sorry, that was covered.
That was
Yeah, the existing condition.
My apologies.
Okay, do we have it right?
I have a question about the language you used for number, I believe it was 5, the stair.
5 is stairs.
I think what we discussed was pull back the southwest stair an equal distance and or consolidate. And yours was just to consolidate it into 1.
It was, I thought we had a straw poll that,
I think it would be best to have 1 stair, but I'm fine with 2. And I know Bob
That's not
wanted
in the,
2.
that's not in the condition.
okay, we have to do a straw poll. Thanks for bringing it up. So I'm gonna vote for 1 stairway consolidation. Bob?
I like the way you just discussed it with the option to move back move back the other stairway
Okay.
or consolidate them into 1.
Okay, Kieran?
Basically that, yeah.
I agree with what Bob said.
Okay, so I am going to, thank you. I am going to reread number 5 and replace it.
Is that how we do it?
Replace it. Replace it as follows. Modify the west stairway to set back further from the sidewalk and or reduce the 2 stairways on the south side to 1 per AC 16 and AC 6. Happy?
Yes.
Kieran?
Oh, I have to do it now. Oh, we're clear, right?
Yes.
All right, I will second it.
Okay, how do you vote?
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, good luck. We'll see you in August. I might be on the big screen. Okay. We'll. All right, next project. Third and last public hearing is Blue Spruce, consideration of a small scale demolition in the historic residential zone district of a non-designated principal structure per land use code 7203A3VC. Preliminary large scale new construction in the HR zone district which will obtain more than 2,500 square feet, FLORA per land use code 7023A1A1. And a minor scale new construction in the HR zone which will contain less than 950 square foot for land use code 7203A1C1. It's at lot 8R, block 16, ETA 485 East Columbia, where we had the site walk. Historic Residential Zone District at 456. The owner is 456 Blue Spruce LLC. And applicant is Bruce Wright and staff member Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you so much. We're here for the review of 45 East Columbia. This is the preliminary large scale. And also site walk occurred at 3 p.m. today where we looked at the story polls and we received public comment from Jesse Peckley. Did everyone have a chance to review?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Doesn't want to move. This project is located in the Historic Residential Zone District, Historic Residential Treatment Area, and it is inside the Historic District, and there are supporting resources directly adjacent to the site. So it is the demolition of a non-designated primary structure and the new construction of a primary structure and accessory structure. So straight to the conditions. Condition 1 is to revise the roof form to be a more traditional and steeply pitched. Condition 2 is to revise the east shed roof form to be similar in scale and pitch to what was seen historically. And condition 6 is to remove the corrugated metal roof from the primary structure. On the left, you can see the roof form. It's a large shed roof form, which is untraditionally large and has a 312 pitch, which gives part of the structure a shallower roof than what was traditionally seen. There is a traditional front-facing gable, but the large shed roof form meets the ridge line at the east of the gable, and it does create a bit of a shallow appearance. The size of the shed roof form is also out of scale for this type of form. And lastly, the corrugated metal is not an appropriate material for a primary structure. Condition 3 is to reduce the size of the second level deck. A deck can help with stepping down to the street and pedestrian scale, but the deck and placement of the deck seems to actually increase the mass and scale. And it is also an untraditional building component for the front of the house to have such a large second level deck. Condition 4 is to reduce the height and overall size of the chimney. The guidelines speak to building components being in scale to what was used historically, and the current chimney is out of scale in both height and width. And condition 5 is to revise the stone veneer to be a foundation material and replace it with a more traditional wall material. The stone veneer is used on large amounts of the house in places all the way up to almost the roof, which is an untraditional application for this heavy of a material. And using this type of material so high on the building also increases the mass and scale. Condition 7 is to revise the project materials to avoid using the same materials on both the primary and accessory structure. Towards the rear of the house, there are similar materials that make the primary structure and accessory structure blend together, especially because there is an enclosed catwalk to the carport. There should be a clear distinction between the primary and accessory structure. Condition 8 is to reduce the width east-west of the alley structure. It is uncommon for an alley structure to span the width of a lot, especially when the lot is 50 feet. Now, not all of this structure is enclosed space, but it does include a semi-transparent mesh for the stairs and then also a carport, and it is very wide for an alley structure. Condition 9 is to revise the alley structure to remove historic details that were not found in Telluride. And condition 10 is to revise the alley structure to have a more traditional roof form. The proposed alley structure has a false front, which is not a building type seen on residential or alley structures in town. And the guidelines speak to not allowing these type of historic details that were not found in Telluride. And I cannot think of one example where there is a false front on a residential structure. There are some in the commercial area, but not on residential structures. And I'm happy to answer any questions before you hear from the applicant. We have Jody in person and Bruce Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, Erica.
Mhm.
Questions? Erica, no?
Eric, I think one of your first comments about the roof, about steeper, are you talking about the 10, 12?
No, I should have put more clarifying language in that condition. I was
Just the
more,
shed.
yes, it's the shed.
I just have one quick question. The front setback's hard to read on the plan because the dimension is on top of some
16 feet.
16.3 3/4.
I believe so.
Just
Each two are right up there. Okay, then let's hear from the applicant, and Jody's here and is Bruce here too.
Bruce is gonna take care of the
All right. If you want to unmute and share your screen.
Curious.
You guys hear me?
Yes,
Great.
welcome.
Thank you. I still, I'm not sure. My computer's kind of hung up on trying to share this screen. But to sort of, I guess, go through in a succinct fashion with, like Erica opened, if you guys just kind of follow along, I really I appreciate there's 10 conditions. I like the way that she grouped them to introduce the scene. And I'd like to say before we even get going, obviously Jody's there, and I believe that Scott and Catherine are also there, the owners of this project. These guys currently have a place on Main Street in the 400 block east, or I'm sorry, west, and they've been coming to town for quite a while, so they're not new to the area, and they do spend a good amount of time here. So just so you guys can put a face to the owner's name there. And then I guess as an overall, we tried to come up with something. We know it's historic residential zoning. We try to come up with a solution that had been approved previously. We've seen this L-shaped house a lot in town. You guys have as well. And so we kind of backed into it from that standpoint. The other standpoint we were stuck with really is just the topography of the site. Walking along Columbia, you're about 20 feet below the alley, which is actually Pandora, but we're treating it as an alley. And you can see along, if you guys made the site walk, there's a lot going on in that alley. There's new buildings, there's historic buildings. There's the duplex that we're asking to raise and replace with this structure. And we thought that this thing fit in pretty nicely. We are essentially matching the footprint of what's existing and what's been on the block previously. You can see the historic houses that are to the west of us are a little further to the south than what we are. Stacy, I'm reading, I think it's 16.5 feet is our setback to the south. And so I'd say inherently this house, like all the others, unless it's a one-story historic structure, they just seem bigger because you're so much below the buildings when it just comes to the elevations and the height. And to address Erica's concerns or conditions specifically, I'll just run through these in sort of the same way. I wrote a lot of notes relative to the guidelines that she cited. But generally speaking, it seems like on the primary structure, it sounds like it's primarily the shed roof. The shed roof does not meet at the ridge. It actually meets the primary roof about 1.5 feet below the ridge. I wanted to make sure that that was clear. There is a cricket that's shown behind the fireplace that might be confusing, but we know you guys like to have that secondary roof lower than the primary. As somebody mentioned, yeah, the primary gables at 10-12, we had kind of experimented with, from 812 to 1212. We landed at this 1012 is what we thought would be a good compromise. There's many examples along this block. I would say from 812 to 1212 primarily. The plate height, just so you guys know, I think it's at about 8.5 feet on the main level. And what we're trying to do is get that main level to sort of be friendly to get to what is the alley entrance, but we believe it's going to be the main entrance for the user, unless you're coming home from just hanging out in town, and using the front door. I think you're going to be coming back from the alley with your car or with your bike and parking it there. And coming in, we try to keep it relatively accessible. We do have an elevator on the inside, and we're trying to think about the users that will need to use that in their experience to and from. So we're not blowing up the volume on the inside of the house. We're definitely within the limits on the primary gable form. And when it comes to the shed form, yeah, I think it is designed and drawn at a 312 right now. We thought that might even be feel like less mass and scale than the 412. There's no discerning point that says when a shed roof is traditional in size or when it's not. And if you guys walk around this thing, there's not many vantages that you'll actually even be able to see this thing. If you look at the house on that streetscape that is to the east of us, there's one house, and essentially they just put the garage off of Columbia, and it's a 3-story house from the pedestrian standpoint. We are matching essentially the same or very similar elevation of the main floor of what is existing in that duplex. It's very close or within a step. We're about maxed out in our steps. I think the existing steps that go from the sidewalk to the house are not to code, so we need to bring that to code, and that's a limitation. And then when it comes to sort of the shed roof and that deck, if you look around town, like again, you'll see this design concept not frequently, but on a double lot, you'll see it a good amount. Very typically, there is that deck there, and I didn't sneak around and measure everybody else's deck, but I didn't think that this was out of scale based on existing projects that are not only in construction or recently finished, but also that have been out there for a while. I don't see these as changing any of the mass and scale much. We don't mind taking a look at those items for sure. When it comes to the chimney, again, just simply based on the placement, we'll look at it. It's not drawn tall from a design standpoint. It's drawn to meet the code where it's got to be 2 feet above the highest point within 10 feet of the roof there. And regarding the width, I'm not sure if there's a traditional width. This strike me as being wider or larger than any chimney. It doesn't come up through the ridge, but that comes back to sort of plan layout. And again, we can look at it, but I think we're going to bump up against some building code issues on that. When it comes to the materials on the primary, the stone going up to the roof, I can see where you guys came up with that. We're willing to revisit some of these materials. And I'm trying to, the corrugated metal roof as well. That's pretty easy. That did seem more traditional than, say, a standing seam metal roof or the pro panel metal roof that's referenced in the guidelines. But again, that's not a deal breaker. I'm interested to hear what the board says about that. I would have to say too, in addition to the scale on the primary, the deck we tried to use as a feature with the rails and the railings being open. We tried to put a front porch as suggested in the design guidelines as well. And thought that it was fairly successful, again, given the perspective that the pedestrian has, no matter what you put up there. When it comes to the alley structure, same thing on the materials. Those are pretty easy to exchange, and I can kind of see in our renderings how it tends to blend with what is the primary residence going to the back. It would be pretty easy to change that bridge connector that comes from the primary to help get to the garage. So again, not a big issue. And then the overall width, I guess the alley structure in general. Right now, it is 21 feet wide, and at the top of that shed roof is about 14 feet. And again, if you guys look at the alley, there's only two other houses on the alley. They're both to the west. One of them's got a 12-12 gable, and it's a two-car garage. It's set really close to the property line or to the setback. We're at like a little over 5 feet off of the setback or off of the property line. And if you examine where the property line is in relation to the asphalt, you'll see that it's actually set back, I would say sort of considerably. It surprised me how far to the south of Pandora the lot line is, and then 5 feet setback. The one house that's at the far end of the block is on an angle. That one's kind of unique in the same way, but again, it's got larger mass and scale than what we're suggesting. And when it comes to the false front, that really wasn't the intention. The intention was to present it as a shed roof that we thought would be received well by you guys in this scene. I'm interested to hear what the board has to say about that. It's a one-car garage with some room for storage because we actually do plan on putting the car in there. And the additional parking that's covered, again, I don't think that's too visible relative to any pedestrians that are cruising across Pandora. The center area that is the stair that accesses basically the site, and the deck on top of the garage is about, I think it's 7'4" wide. And the mesh that's there is kind of used to meet the code so it doesn't look too busy from a railing standpoint, but I think it would be pretty transparent and hard to discern again from the street. So I don't think it's going to read as much as a solid form when you're actually there as it might in some of these renderings. In some of the verbiage, I understand what Erica's point is in a lot of these points. Some of the examples and the specific references, if you guys go through like we do and look at what the guideline actually says, and I think what Eric is intending for us to change, there's, I believe, a bit of a gap. But again, I think we're understanding what's going on with her overall intentions. We sort of we tried to submit this last September. We were told that we weren't doing the heights right. We went back to Erica and gave a couple examples because I couldn't understand how we couldn't meet the height, but our neighbors could. And it turned out that we were being judged or reviewed at a different style than what had been previously done consistently through there. It seemed like that took, I don't know, embarrassingly a little more time than we were hoping for. And we're just hoping, again, not try to beat anything from a design standpoint here. We've seen a lot of these examples around town. We like to be reviewed in a similar fashion with similar standards, obviously, as they develop and mature with your reviews. That's to be understood, but it seemed like this was getting a little more scrutinized than existing examples and recently completed examples. I won't talk about those. So overall, I would have to say we would absolutely love for this to not be continued. Erica mentions she's recommending a continuation. It says mainly pertaining to the roof form and the front deck, as well as the material concerns. And I don't think those are as big as she might. And it says the architectural form on the alley also causes concern over its relation to traditional alley structures. And again, I would say that it's a shed roof. Can't read that it's what she's coining as a false front. And I don't think that you would see it and judge it as such. I don't even think that you would be able to tell that it's not just a solid roof behind it about from any angle. I'm going to ask Jody for us in a second if she's got anything else to offer, but I do want to say that we did read also Jesse and Sheila's letter, and we appreciate that. We're going to take their comments and concerns into consideration as much as we can. And we know them when we meet with them, and we'll try to do the best to make everybody pleasantly happy. There is, and they didn't mention it, there's an existing shed that's off their property on the northeast corner. It kind of goes over their property line in a couple of ways towards us and towards the alley. We're going to do everything we can to obviously protect it and redo the retaining wall and whatnot around there. And so we see that coming. I didn't see that red, but I just want to let you know that those are our intentions. And Jody, if you have anything else to add, otherwise, I think that's it.
Good, thank you.
So Bruce, would you say that of the 10 conditions proposed, to shorten some of our conversation, other than 1, 2, and 8, which you questioned, you feel you can comply with the rest, and you just want to hear board on 1, 2, and 8? Is that what I wrote down? Or was there another one that you were deeply concerned about?
No, I'm really not too concerned with any of them.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions? The applicant? No? Then we'll hear from the public. Come up, please. Read your name into the podium, into the mic. And please keep your comments less than 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Carly Shaw. I live on Pandora for like over 45 years. When did it become an alley? I've never heard of that. And for the first time, we just got paved. What is, I don't understand that part at all. Can you explain how it's our road and we need to make sure it's treated that way? It's not an alley. I would like clarification, I guess.
We can't comment on that, but yeah, we're not allowed. We've read the process rules. We're not allowed to speak with the public, but the applicant could respond to that, which we hope they will respond to all comments. But let's wait till we get all comments made. Please, yes, your name, please.
Yes, I'm David Mallett. I live at 421 East Pandora Avenue. It has been an avenue since it's been on the town maps. I believe in referring to it as an alley, the applicant and architect are trying to divert attention from what is actually an avenue. He referred to how this complies with various other structures that have been built on alleys. This is not an alley. And to approach it in that direction really puts a dark cloud over the whole viewing of the project by all of the residents that have lived on this alley, as I have for the last 35 and here in town for over 50, that this is not an alley, cannot be viewed as an alley. It needs to be viewed as the avenue that it is designated on the town maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Let's see. And, I don't see anybody virtually. Raise your hand electronically if you'd like to speak. Going once. Okay, would the applicant, Bruce or Jody, like to comment on the one comment really?
I don't disagree. In my experience and Jody's, we've been in town for about a little over 30 years. This is only in my terminology saying it's an alley because we've never really seen HARC ever want to approve a driveway access off, I would call it the main streets, the main avenues, whether it's Colorado, Columbia, ironically, Pandora. It's tricky to get that thing in there. You guys can see the parking situation that's there now. We're not proposing that we're calling it an alley. That just seems they're using a front and a back. There's only 2 other people that have used this thing for access, and the most recent guy didn't. I'm surprised he got access off of Columbia. So I'm not proposing to change Pandora Avenue into Pandora Alley at all. And I'd be curious to hear what town has to say about it. But from a design standpoint, we're hoping to put up something that you know, these guys are, the board's they're trying to make us meet these alley structure requirements that we're trying to meet, and then we're open again to how this is interpreted, and we'll take direction. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to deliberations. Let's start.
I can jump in real quick. The usual kind of format, correct? I would say that conditions 1 through 10, and just in general, the memo thoroughly and well analyzed project. I agree wholeheartedly with 1 through 10. Frame it, put it in a museum. Nothing to add.
With regards to the conditions that are in the memo, I think 1 and 2, I do agree with 1 and 2. I think reducing the size of the second level deck by just pulling it back from each building corner instead of having the deck in plane with the corner will serve to step the mass and scale back and reduce the perceived width of the overall structure along the street edge. I understand reducing the size of the mass of the chimney, as Bruce spoke to. I think if you know, there's a code minimum the applicant's dealing with there as well. Reducing the amount of stone veneer and how high it up underneath the eaves is supported by those conditions. Remove the corrugated metal. That one's it's one of our interesting guidelines. Corrugated metal is not an approved roof material, but it's present on each neighbor's house. So guidelines are the guidelines. I think it's to be replaced with a more compliant material. Yeah.
Stacey, are you gonna agree to all 10?
Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead.
Well, no, let me skip to ones that aren't necessarily there then. I think the glazing on the south, especially the, what are there, 6 above those doors is perhaps excessive. Maybe limit those clerestory windows to just the two panels in the middle. Amount of glazing. It's pretty boilerplate stuff we had in there. This
glazing's not a condition.
No, I know. I'm adding more.
Glazing is more thoroughly looked at final review, but if you want to add conditions about it, that's fine.
Well, it might help the applicant get a step ahead. I think it's okay to, Stacey, go ahead.
The stair form at the alley shed, I find the use of that screen metal to be an interesting use of that material. Typically, we see that more on, again, trash enclosures, bike storage. I think using that for an exterior open stair, sort of shield that stair is probably suitable. What I don't like is that it's, again, in the same plane as the alley facade. If that, it looks to me that stair could be shifted. It doesn't seem to necessarily align with major plan elements above or below. If that stair were shifted south so that there was a break in the perceived wall plane, it would reduce the perceived mass or perceived scale at the alley and break up that wall plane, the width of the wall plane. That's, I could put policies for that, but you know, what's the typical ones where you go to step back of the form and mass and scale. And any rate, the other, I think the way the 2 shed roofs, false front in the language of staff, or the shed roof in the applicant, the way the shed roof that slopes to the south and the carport shed roof, they clash at that corner in a really awkward fashion. Really see that in more in the 3-dimensional views, which we don't necessarily have up on the screen, but
Erica, are you able to bring their packet up on the screen?
Yeah.
Look at some.
Wants to look at the north elevation on page 813?
Absolutely.
no, the best one is
3D view.
3D view,
Oh.
1-4, view number.
What page would you like to go to?
1.3.
1.4, right?
I'm sorry, 1.4. Detail 3.
Would you suggest?
Well, the way those two roofs collide at the way the eaves would cut it. Now I understand the stairs coming up and there's an opening. There's some falseness going on there. And I don't mean false front the way Erica meant it. I mean that the stairs coming up and that ridge line doesn't continue, but the ridge and the eave collide in a way that's awkward and visible.
Okay.
If you'd like me to come up with a condition for that, I could.
Better keep it simple.
Well, I think it'd be under roof forms and simple.
But while you're looking at, is there another way?
Well, this particular view, I think, covers at least two of the things I've talked about. You can see that shed mesh farmhouse in the same plane. If that just stepped in a little bit. Concern covered in number 10.
Yes, perhaps.
But it's
You want to
different.
be more
It's
specific. That's
different.
fine, but yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got.
So I'll jump in. So again, I agree with what Stacy was saying or Kieran about a really good review by Erica. I would say condition number 1 and 2, I think, are talking about the same roof. So I don't know if we want to combine those or just add to number 1, revise the shed roof form. I think we could leave them or combine them. I did want to talk about the corrugated metal. I actually feel that the corrugated metal is an appropriate primary material. It does exist on both neighboring lots. I think it's a little bit more of a domestic material. It feels equal to me and as standing seam. So I would advocate for removing number 6.
Allowed?
Well, the guidelines talk about metal, and then they go on to elaborate on standing seam. But I mean, you could argue that a corrugated metal roof is a sheet metal roof. It's just got corrugation. I think in this particular case, because it exists currently on both neighboring projects, it's well on the neighboring project. Strike 6. I agree with Stacy's comment about the stairs to the alley setting that back off of the garage wall plane. I think would help reduce that facade width. I agree with the rest of the conditions except for maybe 9 and 10. I want to talk a little bit more about the alley and sorry, not alley, but the Pandora Avenue structure. Sort of threw me for a loop with the public comments. Do alley conditions apply here? You can see some parallels with smaller garage structure, but I don't know if that sort of picks these out as something we can reference. Still applicable. I think what Erica's asking in general with the width and are sort of minor tweaks. I'm really kind of curious about the false front or the shed roof that doesn't have a roof. Like hear more what the board says about that. I'm a little torn whether I think it's appropriate. I don't think you would see it from a pedestrian view. You'll see it from up, but not quite sure how to vote on that particular piece.
Well, it is an interesting conundrum then, right? If this is an avenue, then it's not alley structures guidelines that we're applying. Does it bring up, it's a rear yard setback, not an alley setback? Does that change things?
I think the substance of the setbacks and step downs are the same.
Okay, so then traditionally, we would say that this structure doesn't step down to the public way.
Well, it's pretty small structure.
Okay, so we're okay with the size, the mass and the scale of it. Is the fact that it's not a roof problematic? Pretending to be a roof.
Pretending to be a shed roof form. And from the deck way, you're probably not gonna be able to tell that it's not a shed roof form.
Can I jump in?
Yes, Bob.
I agree with the discussion on this. The non-alley structure, whatever we want to call it, has a commercial to be, and it doesn't read as a garage or a, an accessory building. I think I agree, definitely pushing the stair back and the roofs of those elements back would certainly help a lot. But I think that overall width of the garage itself is too much. That it reads like a commercial building to me on the street. And I think if you look at the other garage structures, they're much smaller. They blend in more, and you don't have this big massive thing right there on Pandora. I'd like to see it reduced and simplified. I don't really all those window openings up above read as a clear door windows, and it doesn't read as an alley building to me, or even a residential building. It reads as a commercial building. Maybe
And I
I'm
think
wrong, but
to be
what I think.
consistent, sorry, Bob, to be consistent in the last item, we talked about how the perception of a form from one or selected viewpoint doesn't make it the thing. In other words, an asymmetric shed roof viewed from one particular angle isn't a shed roof, even though it might appear to be. This might appear to be a shed roof from a particular location, but it isn't. Neither in function or form.
And I would also chime in that the guidelines side in terms of introducing incorrect historical details in this way is relevant here. Whether or not the intention was for it to look here as a false front, it very much is. So
Unlike last project, we're in the historic district here.
yeah,
So
I don't know.
I mean,
I think we all agree.
I like it. I think it's a cool solution and it'd be a nice space. But I don't think it's supported in this particular district by these guidelines.
I agree.
False front to me, you won't get.
I think it's not a roof pretending to be a roof.
Okay.
The definition of a false front.
So I'm hearing the majority is voting to keep 9 and 10. Need to change these alley guideline references to.
Well, 9 uses the word alley, but I think that's just
secondary
placing it, the rear or the north structure as opposed to alley structure. It's not referencing an AS, not for 9. Right, 9 is HR and HR. 10,
you could still
to have a more traditional roof form should just simply be HR. Well,
I'm just simply asking the question to try to substitute these alley guideline standards for something else.
I don't
Or do we think that Bruce and Jody understand what the name and Erica means?
I think we.
Okay. In this case, we're not defining Pandora as an alley. We're just trying to apply a consistent set of guidelines to a secondary structure at the rear lot.
I'll just jump to finish here. Stacy, I also agree with your southern comment. It's the last thing I wanted to check.
Well, if we don't want to add that now and add it later.
Let's add it now because it gives them a head start and have to change it later. I think that's a good one. So Bob, any other additional ones?
We did talk a little bit about the windows on the front facade, the amount of clear stories, and just maybe a general comment to reduce the amount of glazing.
Yeah, we're gonna keep that in.
Okay, I didn't know if we actually made that one or not, so I'm just want to make sure that got in there.
Thank you. Yep, it's on the list. I have one new one or different one. I actually, after the walk, I realized that I rode my bike. So I walked home and then I went back. Kieran witnessed this fiasco, but anyway.
You told me not to tell anybody. Now
Okay,
you're
I'm
blabbering
just
off the whole meeting.
kidding. I'm over 70. So I went back there, but it's a good thing I did because I went across the street and went down the street on my bike and I looked again. And the only thing that I would add or ask for discussion on, but I feel is fairly serious, is on street setback. And I know it's 16 feet, but as I look to the east, I counted 11 out of, or excuse me, west, 11 out of 12 houses going west are 1 story or 1.5 story, and most of them set back further, especially, and many of them don't have this big porch that comes out, whatever that is, 8 feet. So my belief was that should discuss setting it back a little further off of Columbia for that reason with context of the neighborhood. And I have guidelines to back it up. It would help with the mass scale. So I just think, yes, to the 2 houses to the east, it looks fine. But everything going to the west, it's like it's too close to the street, especially when you consider this, and it's a beautiful porch, but many of those don't even have it. So it's just too close to the street in my mind. And I'd like to see what anybody else agrees. Bob, so.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, and then everybody, you want to comment, weigh in? Kieran, we'll just go down the line.
Good. Well, I think 15 feet is the setback and they're 1 foot 3 3/4 above that.
Yeah.
They're beyond compliant.
Yep, except for context of the neighborhood. This is one of the most.
Well, you're
sensitive
talking about
streets.
context of the block. I think if you looked at the neighborhood, the next block to the east,
Yep.
those houses I think are a lot closer to this, or closer to the 15-foot setback.
I'll revise it to context of the block. When 11 out of 12 houses is not like 2 out of 12 houses. To me, that was on my second trip today. That's what really struck me. That's all I can share. Bob says he favors that. Kieran says yes. How about you guys?
I think I'm leaning towards Stacy here. I think the overall mass is compliant with the setback. I think we could maybe discuss reducing how far the porch sticks out into. Porch is a nice scale defining feature. It's helping it step down. That and the planters and the retaining site wall.
How deep is that porch, Matt? Let's see. Well, we could do an and/or, set back the porch and/or the house south facade. I mean, really, if you guys stood there and looked down that street like I did the second time, I think it's what I saw, 11 out of 12 homes. That's what's. But if you want to make it an and/or, let's see how deep that thing is.
I don't see a dimension.
Actually, we don't normally interact, but just with the applicant, but to save time, Bruce, you know how deep that porch is, front porch?
10 feet.
10 feet, thank you. Save time.
What if we went to 8 feet? Let's look at the difference. Front yard setback.
I think that would be great to push that back a bit as well, since you have 2 other sitting areas on that facade up above and to the east. So reducing that porch a little more traditional size, I think would be great.
I'd be okay with that. I mean, some of the facades are pushed back further and they don't even have porches, but I mean, I can go with an and/or or whatever you want.
Go with and/or.
Okay, all right.
That's fine.
Okay. So to capture these, we've agreed to eliminate 6 because of.
Well, that's what I'm voting for, but I'm not sure
In
everybody.
a straw poll, I would say leave 6 in.
Do the straw poll. So 6 is in with you, Stacy. Doesn't specifically outlaw corrugated. That's why the other houses have them.
I think
One
we're-
of the houses is a rated structure, so that's a traditional material for a rated structure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, I could go either way here. Look, our goal here is to be substantially not compliant or substantially compliant, not completely compliant. I could let this one slide if big steps are made on some of the other items. But I don't think it just does, I don't think it leaves corrugated out. I think it says corrugated is not.
Isn't this where it says for foundation material only? Corrugated. This section, but then in this section, it doesn't outlaw corrugated.
Whether or not they use corrugated roofing material is not this concern here.
Let's see where we are, Matt.
I would like to remove number 6.
Bob?
I could remove 6.
I'll go on with removing 6.
All right. So we're gonna, I guess that'll. Okay. But otherwise, we've got 1 through 10, then we have the and/or setback of the south facade and/or porch. Thinking bigger, but
I think 2 is good with me, but I don't.
That's what I
normally like
wrote.
to
That's what I
give a
wrote
number.
down here.
everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Bob, you good with that?
Number 2?
2 feet back on the south facade, further back, push it back.
Push it back, yes.
Okay. And then glazing reduction, and then the alley steps, the alley, wall plane form of the garage.
That's captured under 9.
Well, yeah, okay, so that's sufficient. Have any others?
Did we talk about the stair at the alley?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just
Okay.
listed the garage stairs, step back the garage stairs.
So Stacy did make a comment about the carport roof. I don't know if around you.
I don't know if anyone really signed off on what it.
Didn't think you'd see it much, the public, I don't know. It got away from me, but
The only other thing I had is number 1 to add the word shed roof.
and delete 2.
No, just to keep both.
Oh, okay.
Clarifies.
That's, I'm sure
I think
that's
everyone's-
fine, yeah. So what we have is 1 through 10. We have this setback of the south facade or porch, 2 feet. South glazing reduction. Garage setback to garage steps. There's, yeah,
And strike number 6.
and strike 6. Who wants to make this one besides me? Somebody else.
I don't have any other condition, these other conditions crafted. I'm happy to make the motion and have you add them.
Well, unless somebody else volunteers, you just did. Mike, get your mic there.
Okay, I move to continue to the September 18th, 2024 HARC meeting. Very large scale new construction, minor scale new construction, 485 East Columbia Lot 8R Block 16 ETA, based on the findings in the staff memo dated July 17th, 2024, with the following conditions. Revise number 1 to say, revise the shed roof form to be traditional and steeply pitched per HR 19A 1 and 3 for 2 through 5 as stated. Strike number 6, number 7 through 10 as stated. And I'm open to additional conditions.
Who wants to go first? Stacy, got some or?
Well, sure. 11, step back the stair, the secondary structure, so that it is not in the same, so that the north elevation of the stair is not in the same plane. North elevation of of the structure. Of course, you're gonna ask for that. Well, no, I got it. Policy 13, building setbacks. That's not a good one either. Oh, it'd be 17 policy mass and scale, 17B. Break up the massing of larger buildings into components, the stair being a separate component.
Add one about anything on the south. 12.
So yeah, number 12, reduce glazing on the south elevation, specifically the clerestory windows above or panel door. HR 25 B, window to wall ratio, similar to that comparable to historic building.
Number, are we ready for 13? 13, number 13 would be setback south facade and or porch a minimum of 2 feet per HR 13A1.
So can I get a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second.
Read the rest of the motion.
Oh, my apologies. This motion is
All
based
right.
on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on July 17, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code, revised plans.
You don't need the
I don't
rest.
think you need to read that about them.
That's for an approval.
Oh, that'll be it then.
How do we vote?
No, I'll second that.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, how do we vote?
Kiernan, yes.
Casey, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Okay, we're not doing the demo.
No,
Nope.
we'll,
Do the demo?
No.
Continue.
Continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Shouldn't be a problem, but
Thank you.
procedure. Thank you. Good luck. We'll see
Thank
you. Okay, our last item is a work session, which we always commend people for coming in and doing a work session.
Mark, can we take a 5-minute break so I can get set up over there?
Yes. 5-minute break. This is your. And Matt, you want to read into the record your recusal? Go ahead.
Mark, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm the applicant for this work session.
Okay, thank you. So we'll proceed then with 317 North Spruce. It's consideration application for a work session for new construction pursuant to Land Use Code 5201C at Lot 5R, Block 29. It's at 317 North Spruce. It's in the HR district. Owner Ray Johnson, applicant 8150 Architects, and staff member Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is a work session for 317 North Spruce. We received public comment from Jane and Gary Hickox, Lauren and Scott Woodward, Rob Usan and Amy Yenkin, Sarah and Scott Goodman, and Vivian Russell and Peter Hazard. Did everyone have time to review these comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this project is located in the Historic Residential Zone District in the Historic Residential Treatment Area, and it is located inside the Historic District. The house is supporting and the shed is non-contributing without qualifications. Here are the Sanborn maps beginning in 1893. The house changed minimally from 1893 to 1922, and the historic structure was renovated in 2010. And I just want to highlight that the applicant is proposing to reposition the historic house 7.5 feet to the south. This would be one of the largest repositioning staff and ARC have. This would be one of the largest repositioning staff and ARC has seen in recent history. So I would really request that HARC provides really detailed feedback on this part of the proposal. And just as a reminder, HARC's review at a work session is not intended to vest the applicant or the public with any reliance as to the outcome of the formal development review process. And I am happy to answer any questions or be here from Matt.
No questions.
Great.
Thanks for doing the work session. Will the applicant introduce themselves again?
Matt Lee, 8150 Architects, here.
I think you.
Let me reposition myself a bit. So I am happy to review my packet, answer any specific questions. Well, I'm happy to go through my packet, or if you guys want me to and answer any questions you have, or I'm happy to cut to the chase about the repositioning. Just wanted to see if the commission had any confusion on what we're asking, or.
I think go ahead and give the introduction, and then let's get, in 5 minutes, then we get to this repositioning choices A and B. And
okay. This site's got a bit of a confusing history with PUD. Current PUD is in effect. It happened in 2010. It was modified in 2015. We are approved for a density of 3 units on the site. We are proposing to subdivide the lot. Part of the subdivision is one of the reasons to ask for the repositioning of the historic structure to the south. We're proposing 2 options in this packet. Option A is our favorite. It repositions the house 7.5 feet. It also keeps the northern shed form that exists there, which is a partial reconstruction of the historic shed form that was removed. Option B removes that northern shed form and only repositions the house 3.5 feet. Let me flip through some imagery here. So on screen is what was approved in the 2009 PUD. There was essentially a duplex structure in yellow approved on the north side of the lot. The historic house, which I'm going to call the red house in this packet, stayed in the same place, and the shed was repositioned. In 2010-11 renovation, the house was moved off of its site, a basement was built. It was repositioned about 6 inches to the north and 6 inches to the east of where it originally was. And the historic northern shed portion was removed, and a portion of it was rebuilt. Here's the diagram of the repositioning. What I have here is sort of just there's some phasing that will have to happen in this project. That's why all these diagrams here. This is essentially where you have today, and this is what you would end up with option number 1. Happy to zoom in on any of these views if you want to take a closer look.
Could you go back and forth between A and B as seen from the street, or if you're getting to it, then do it just so we can see them kind of back to back or side to side or one after the other.
Gotcha. I can't bring up that slide side by side. So this is essentially A here, where we have the existing roof form on the north, the shed roof form, and the repositioning of 7.5 feet. Have that in B. Yeah, I don't, but let me zoom into a view that'll show that. So this on the screen is option B, where you see the shed roof form has been removed, and the repositioning request is at 3.5 feet. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yep. Why is it? How'd you pick 7.5 feet? How does that make this site work?
So 7.5 feet allows us to keep that northern shed roof
That's
form,
the trigger.
and then it allows the northern lot to be 25 feet wide.
So you'll still have a 6-foot setback between the two?
Yes, correct. Try to jump to some more, just quickly skim on a couple of things.
Are we even going to see the shed from the street? I guess not.
Yes, you would. Let me go to a view where you can see that.
Through the
So here are the existing conditions. You can see the historic red house. You can see the existing non-historic EDU in the background and the neighbor to the north. Church property over here, you can barely see the roof of the structure. And then if we take a street view from Spruce, looking in between the buildings, you see this shed here in option A. I want to point out that, as you know, that we do approve repositioning occasionally for certain reasons. This project that we approved last May on 515 West Galena was repositioned in 2 directions. One off of the alley, and the other direction was farther to the south to make room for a larger garage space in the back. So I think the core of this conversation for the repositioning in my mind is, would a repositioning be noticed in relationship to the other historic buildings? So here's a view of the neighborhood from town GIS or historic buildings. So we've got the red house in the middle, supporting project. Just a quick note, this is incorrectly labeled. This the EDU is not contributing. This is meant to be a shed, which is not shown here. So our closest historic neighbor is St. Patrick's, local landmark here. It's about 75 feet away. And then we have 2 contributing houses across the street. And then we have another non-contributing house across the street, and then 2 other non-contributing structures diagonal across the alley. So if we look at the distances, we've got about 77 feet to the local landmark, and then greater distances to these other historic structures. So what my applicant, or sorry, my client and I were kind of grappling with, and why we came up with this proposal, is we feel that if this building was shifted a bit to the south, that its relationships to the other historic structures will not be as noticeable versus a project where you have a 6 or a 10-foot sort of setback between historic structures. Here's just another kind of view of the streetscape with the proposed repositioning, the proposed new construction on the proposed new lot to the north, and then we have St. Patrick's all the way down here. So I think that's what I want to present to you. Again, happy to answer more questions, dive into more detail. I don't want to waste your time with nuances.
Well, the nice thing about a work session is we can just chat back and forth. So we'd like to start chatting. Bob, hey, what do you think, Bob?
Well, I'm torn a little bit about the whole thing, but I think minimal relocation of the red house. So let me just go back though. The previous approval, did that require moving the red house?
It did not.
They just did a skinnier building, kept the setbacks, and
the previous approval I have on the screen here, they did a skinnier building. They were allowed to build 3 units on the lot. Proposing the same density. The result, though, I think, is that the structure that they're proposing, to me and to my client, just felt it was intruding on the red house just a little bit too much. It didn't seem like the right solution for this lot to us. So that's why we thought the subdivision and the repositioning would be more appropriate for sort of the more traditional lots in town and how the town sort of grid is laid out.
And then the proposed site plan, please.
A and D.
Well, the minimal moving it.
Minimum. Okay, I'll go to B.
So we're adding a substantial addition to the red house.
Yes.
Which is not very big to begin with. Well, I would, if we're gonna say you can move it, I would say move it the minimal amount, keeping it as close to its historic location as possible. Look at the addition behind it. And I don't know if we're really going to get into the design of this thing at this point, but I think it really needs to be more subservient to it. And I think I do appreciate the stepping down that you have from the house to the right, then the addition kind of steps down, and then you step down to the red house. I think that I like that idea. I don't know. The big question is about the moving it. My real preference would be to leave it where it is, but if we agree to move it, then move it minimally.
Is the only reason for B not being the favorite because that non-qualifying little shed addition went away?
The reason that we started with option A is initial meetings with Jonna and Eric on site. And Jonna's comment was that she appreciated that northern roof form, even though it's the historic material was removed and then it was rebuilt in a similar shape, but about as less than half as wide as it used to be. So it's just it's a remnant of what was there, and she appreciated that. And so we wanted to honor what Jonna's sort of initial thoughts were, and that's why we were showing option A. If the HARC Commission doesn't feel that keeping that non-historic northern shed form, because it's not the full version of what was there previously, is important, then we're fine with option B.
And option B is moving it further.
No, option B is the more minimal. It's 3.5 foot reposition to the south and just to the south.
And that's with the addition or not with the addition?
Correct. But both of the only difference in the proposals is the amount of movement of the red house and then keeping the northern shed form or not.
Okay, but if you keep the shed, you got to move it further.
Correct.
Could you make the building in between narrower?
Excuse me?
Could you make the building in between the new building narrower?
The
by 3
addition?
feet, so that you could keep that and not move it as much? I'm just throwing out some ideas here. I'm
sure. No, yeah. The whole reason that we need to move it 3.5 feet in option B is because of the lot line division, adding the subdivision. So in order to keep a 25-foot wide lot to the north without requesting a P&Z variance to that lot line width, we would need to keep. That's the reason for the repositioning for the most part. I skipped over. I want to add that there are some non-historic additions, the bay window additions to the back that we are planning on removing. We want to, when this building was renovated in 2010, 2011, they put cementitious siding on that has fake wood grain. It feels very unnatural and to us. And we want to reclad this building with historically appropriate painted wood siding. We want to remove the bay window. We want to just clean it up a bit to have its public facades read more like, let me point another image here. You know, we want to take the public facades back to this view here.
Yeah, that's a good thing. All right. Kieran.
Yeah, I guess I would say neither, A or B.
That was my first thought.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily know. We're being presented with two options, but I don't necessarily think this is altogether binary. You know, especially when we're talking about a supporting structure, generally the only reason that I've ever voted to approve a move is if it's in the best interest of the preservation of the structure itself. Not necessarily that, you know, a future development would put the preservation of the structure at risk. To me, it'd be work around what's currently there, because siding is an extraordinarily important part of why this building got its rating. It's important to preservation, generally speaking. So right now, I'm not seeing the compelling reason to reposition it much at all. So that's where I would fall. I would wait for the full application. You know, obviously this isn't investing anything, but right now I can't see the scenario where I would vote yes on that.
I think.
Thank you for explaining what I was trying to say.
Look, for me, if it was full contributing, I would definitely be more stringent. I guess I would not be in favor of 7.5 foot relocation, which, as Erica started the meeting, I don't know if we've ever even done. I don't know. But I don't have a problem with that shed going away, and probably don't have a problem with 3.5 feet. I think for me, the passerby, that's always my kind of, what would the passerby see? 30 or 42 inches. I don't know if the passerby would ever notice anything, but the bigger issue, because you asked us comment on both, the second one is, the subordination of the additions. I mean, this is a precious house, I know all this. I mean, to me, that's where I'm probably more stringent, is the size, mass, and scale of the additions, than I am 42 inches one way or the other. But I definitely could not vote for A. And I realize Karen and Bob might not want to vote for A or B, but that's
Yeah.
how I feel.
I guess the push, I don't want to get into a full drawn out debate with you here on this, but I guess the pushback on it would be that we don't want it to slide any further from where it is in terms of its rating, and citing is one of those core instances that's cited for why a structure is rated as highly as it is. So I wouldn't want to do anything to encourage a potential down rating of it at all.
I could add too, that when I was taking projects through as, the town historic architect, when the only time we ever felt good about moving a historic building, whether it's supporting or contributing, was when it was either on the property line or too close to the side property line, and you had to do all these horrible things to mitigate that issue. Whereas if you moved it, 18 inches or 2 feet or whatever it is, you could keep the side of the building intact. You didn't have to put sprinklers on it and all this other stuff. So I just, I'm glad Kernan said what he said, because that's what I was trying to say and I wasn't getting it out very well. That I would prefer to see a solution to leave it where it is.
Can I just real quick read from the intro? I'm not going to obviously read the whole intro because that would take too much time, but I'll just cut to 2 sentences. In the 3rd paragraph of the intro, preserving the manner in which buildings were historically sited on their lots constitutes a major goal for this area. And from later in the introduction, because this historic context is well established, moving or relocating original historic structures from within this treatment area is strongly discouraged. So for me, it's about why. Why is this being moved? The example, Matt, that you have in your project, I am familiar with, and so I should probably be careful about how I talk about it, because I might have to have a HARC amendment. But the purpose for that repositioning was that structure existed in the right of way, and it was repositioned primarily to get it out of the right of way. And as you noted, there was a 3-foot shift to the south, which did allow for a secondary structure. But the primary reason for that was because it was in the right of way, and it was to get it out of the right of way. That's a very different rationale for moving a structure than we need a compliant lot width for another development.
Just, I would say that future development should work around what's currently there in this instance.
Yeah, and I do think that the red house could be moved gently and preciously, and it could be preserved, and no one would know. But that doesn't, I guess, matter, because the historic context would be changed. And so I think whatever we do, we have to do it very carefully and with a lot of deliberation.
Can you go back to the view of the whole block and everybody's setback across the street, et cetera? This appeared to be the most setback.
Is this the one you're
of anybody? Well, it showed houses across the street too. It was more of a plan view.
That one.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well,
I mean, it's allowed to be more setback than anything else because it's a historic structure for which the rest of the context is derived.
he's even talking about setting it back further. I'm wondering, and I don't know that it's a risk or not a risk, but how does that feature the historic house like that? Is it better to be closer or further away, I guess?
Where it is, just leave it where it is.
So, Mark,
Yeah.
I want to mention that the previous PUD, one of the public benefits was to define a private open space easement in front of the house. And so we're honoring that. It's already recorded. We're not challenging it. So we have no intention of moving. The only direction we have any intention of moving the houses is to the south, no other direction.
And the reason is because the PUD gives you the public benefit of setting up more open space. That was the public benefit.
So the public benefits that were exchanged were the private open space, and then there was an additional 400 square feet of affordable housing that was promised to be built in the future. So the private open space easement was recorded. The actual new construction of 400 square feet was not done, but we're planning on honoring both of those conditions with a PUD amendment.
Okay. Eric, could you, just to put it to bed, I think we're about done here, but do you have any opinion on, I mean, you've never lived through the feds coming in and doing a new survey. And obviously it's desirable, and it says it's discouraged. It didn't say it's outlawed, but
Strongly.
Huh?
Strongly
encouraged or strongly discouraged, excuse me. Do you have any sense of any risk to the rating or anything?
I do.
You do?
I
Okay.
think it could be a risk to
You
the
share it?
rating. What?
Can you share it?
I think it would be a risk to the rating.
Okay.
And
Okay.
having been involved with previous survey, I would totally agree. That would be a risk.
I do think since there's an effort here to honor an affordable housing part of a PUD, we could look at right now the proposed development to the north is held back that same, what is it, 35, 33 feet? Even though the house to the north is more traditional 15 ballpark. Because the red house is mostly observed from the south.
Is this helpful?
Yeah,
Talking about
could
how
we,
far this is?
yeah, could we maybe give a little on that and say 25 or 26 feet? To give back a little of the area that we aren't allowing by allowing the repositioning. I mean, we want to help honor that PUD and the affordable housing.
I'd be okay with that.
It's more contextual with the house to the north anyway.
Yeah.
Block average and that kind of thing.
Stacy, would you repeat what you're saying? Sorry.
So
Yeah, please.
the 35'2" is not a standard front yard setback. The red house enjoys that, and it enjoys that open space. But if we want to allow the PUD to be honored, the previous PUD to be honored, mightn't we allow the new house to have a setback more in the range of 25, 24, 25 feet to help make the square footage work out? Does that make sense?
So you're saying instead of 33 feet, we're proposing that this creeps up into the front yard a bit more. You know, if that's something that HARC would like to see, we're more than welcome to look at it. We were trying to sort of honor the idea.
We're just saying if it
And I get that, but the view to that corner is already obscured by the house further to the north.
Yeah.
So views of that would be helpful.
Another side note, we have I haven't spoken in person to the neighbor north, but they do have a deck and windows here, and part of this pushback and having a deck in the front was, let me go to a view that shows that was trying to retain as much of their view as possible. Oops. So you can sort of see here this grouping of windows and these decks. That's one of the other reasons we were trying not to push that structure that far towards.
And wouldn't that designated open space continue regardless if you split the lot?
Yes.
So you need to be back.
Okay.
To be back.
Well,
the open space
is in green here. That's what is designated here in this green hatch.
So above that, it's not?
Correct.
But you're holding it back because of the windows and decks and things on the building to the north.
Yes, and I think also it just helps to defer a little bit more to the historic house by not pushing that front closer to spruce. Yeah, we realize this is sort of a big ask, and that's why we're coming in a work session. We're trying to be as sensitive as we can,
Yeah.
with still developing this property.
Well, I guess that's where we are.
Yeah, at what point does we make sense to hear from the public since?
Yeah, well, I wanted to see where we were, but we got some people in the public that hung out here for this. So this is a casual work session, so without formality, but come up and please read your name into the mic and make your comments.
Jane Hickox, 119 East Gregory, which is one lot and Gregory Avenue away from this. I had a number of things to say, but given your comments, I won't waste your time trying to reiterate, what some of the language in code is regarding a rated structure. I would, for information, tell you that the original PUD in 2010, this structure was rated contributing. And I've been trying to find out why it was reduced to supporting and wondering whether the alterations that were done with the initial PUD could have been part of the reason. And then, I caught the note that inappropriate alterations can be reversed. And it seemed that maybe a more appropriate treatment of the red house would be to restore that northern shed roof the way it is in all the historic photos and take off the bay window, and perhaps on a new inventory, it could increase its rating again back to where it was. I'm very pleased to hear much in the way I was hoping that this commission really is a guardian of our historic structures that remain. Not interested in moving or relocating structures for the purpose of facilitating additional development. That's not the idea as I understand it. So I think I'll reserve other comments and see what direction you go for another hearing perhaps, or another application. But at this point, I'm totally pleased to hear you suggest at least a feeling initially that moving this is not going to increase the historic significance of it as is intended by the guidelines. And, the context on the block with another structure that close just seems inappropriate. The other thing that I would offer up is that this would be the only historically platted lot on the 300 block of North Spruce that has been subdivided if they go that direction. All the ones on the east side of Spruce are still 50 feet. So it just seems in a number of ways that this is pushing it. And I feel like we need to stop losing it and protect things. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please.
Hi, my name is Amy Yankin. My husband and I live to the north of 317 at 325, so the house that we've been talking about. I've been coming to Telluride since 1987 when my parents bought a home at Glean and Davis, and we now spend about half the year here in this really wonderful community. And this is my very first HARC meeting, so this has been very interesting for me. And it's nice to hear your discussions. And I really appreciate the opportunity to comment. Actually, a lot of what I was going to say, you've been talking about. And like Jane, I'm very, very encouraged to hear how important it is to preserve the red house and the historic nature of it. I thought maybe I would just focus on the issue of that you were just talking about the open space and whether in the positioning of our home and relative to what you see. And what I would say is that actually the red house is visible completely. Our house does not block that. So I would be interested to know if the lots are allowed to be split and a house is built on the north, shouldn't the new house be set back enough to allow for the traditional sideline and for the house to be able to be seen from all of its original settings as it is right now? This is a large project, and I'm sure there's going to be other issues that come up. But for now, I'm really was very focused on the historic nature and on the plot and being able to see it. So I'm really encouraged to hear how much Telluride values this and that you share my interest in the preservation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Appreciate everybody's comments. Oh, one more.
Hi, my name is Peter Hazard, and I live directly to the west on the alley. My address is 110 East Gregory, and I've got 13 years experience living on that alley. And both plans A and B, this is maybe more of a comment for P and Z, but the whole plan hinges on installing garages on the alley, and it's in my opinion absolutely not workable. The alley does not get cleared on a regular basis. It's extremely steep. This went, I don't know if it was HARC, but it was addressed when a shed at the end of the alley was proposed to be turned into a garage, and that almost became a garage, but it didn't because of the inaccessibility in the winter of the alleys. So we're proposing 3 households to be relocated to an extremely narrow, extremely steep alley, which I know from personal experience is not maintained in the winter. And as I understand it, to have a garage included in a structure, it has to be accessible year round. And there hasn't been much talk about the accessibility, and it's iffy, not impossible in my opinion. So I would love to see, I know that Stevie Green went through, jumped through a lot of hoops to get a curb cut on Spruce, and to have that abandoned, I think would be detrimental to the entire neighborhood and overburden a extremely difficult alley. And that's about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good comments. Thanks. Matt, any other final comment? Did we answer your question, I guess?
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate the feedback. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay. All right. This meeting will be adjourned at 9:11 p.m.
By unanimous consent.
Huh?
By unanimous consent.
Yes. Unanimous has to be 5 strikes.